Okay, hello, and thanks to everyone who's been watching the Australia and Pacific programme at WOW Global 24. We'd like to say thanks to the WOW Foundation for bringing the festival together, and to their global founding partner, Bloomberg, and founding partner, MasterCard, for making the Foundation's work possible. I'd also like to take a moment to acknowledge our sponsors who have supported today's contribution to WOW Global 24, in particular our principal partner, the Queensland Government, and strategic partners, Griffith University and QSuper. Thanks also to my team, to Joe, Julie, Nadia and Phil, our colleagues in Fiji, Michelle and Sharon, and to ActionAid Australia for providing additional content and connections. I'd like to say a huge thanks to all the artists and speakers who joined us today for the festival. Your contribution has demonstrated the resilience we have found during this response to the crisis and our hopes and fears for the future. How we have reconnected with what it is to be human. How we've realized the importance of family, the importance of time, the importance of art and culture, and of the environment, or as we would say here, country in our lives. What we can learn from other cultures, and in particular in Australia and Pacific, from our First Nation and refugee women as we rebuild society and new economies. Finally, that by placing a gender lens on recovery, the world will be a better place for us all. Or in the words of Sharon Bagwan-Rolls, let's redesign and redefine the table that we sit at. Or of Deb Kilroy, who you might have heard earlier today, that normal is a spin cycle on a washing machine, and many of us do not want to go back there. My particular thanks, as always, to Lita Brett, to Sandra Phillips, to June Oscar and Quentin Bryce for your ongoing wisdom, guidance and advice, and of course to Jude Kelly and to Domino and all the team in London. So I'm now delighted to hand over to you, Gauri Sharma Tripathi, who is going to welcome you to the next part of the WOW Global 24 channel. Thank you. Over to you, Gauri.
Namaskar. Thank you, Kathy. Wonderful to hear from you and to see the 4 hour of this fantastic, as you say, the spinning, which went on, and redefining, reassessing, analyzing what time is and what we are doing here and now. We don't reinvent the wheel, but we revive ourselves. There is a logic to it. There is love, there is compassion, there is affection, and great energy which has come from you, Kathy, and the entire team which has put this together. Food for thought for India for the next season. Perhaps we'll also pick up the 4 hour run together on that. So thank you so much. And let me welcome the entire world to this place, India, Bharat Mata, as it's called. The land of variety of things, land which has got connections, the land which has got spirituality, the land which has got the power of here and now, and a small speck of it. Today I take you through something called the Red Catalogues. These are short stories, short experiences by 6 women who have made a change and brought dynamics in the society by the belief that they have. I want to thank the WOW Foundation, Jude Kelly, Domino, Lou, and Shireen for bringing us a very unusual way of presenting this festival. I've been associated with the WOW Festival, which started at the South Bank Center with Jude Kelly, and now, of course, the WOW Foundation, which is really holding the essence of what womanhood is and how do we take this dialogue of women of the world to a level which really brings the resilience, the power, and the energy to go back and reinvent and adhere and be women and beauty along with it. We present the Red Catalogues, which is in conjunction and the support of Jagriti Yatra, one of these unique foundations which has actually taken a train journey around India. And these women who are speaking about their stories, their power, their resilience of evolving, supporting, having the compassion, supporting the foundation, and bringing stories to create a different energy in holding the society together. So the Red Catalogues is an invention of they filming their own stories on their small tablets, and we compiling them together. Isha Tripathi has edited it. I want to thank Vaishali Man and Shashank Tripathi from the Jagriti Yatra team for allowing us to explore the stories of these women, and we bring the Red Catalogue opening to you.
देवरिया जिले के रहने वाली हूँ। मैं एक छोटे से गांव की रहने वाली हूँ, साधारण सी महिला। मैंने शुरू से इंटरनेट साथियों का काम स्टार्ट किया था और उसके बाद से आज की डेट में मैं जो शिक्षण केंद्र चलाती हूँ, जिसमें कुछ महिलाओं को सिलाई कढ़ाई भी मैंने सिखाया हुआ है, अभी प्रशिक्षण चलता है मेरे यहाँ। उसके बाद से मैंने एक सैनिटरी पैड का काम स्टार्ट किया था, जिसमें कुछ महिलाएं मेरे साथ में काम करती हैं। ये महिलाओं के लिए बहुत अच्छा ये है, उनके स्वास्थ्य पे भी मैं काम कर रही हूँ। उसके बाद से ये जो महामारी अभी चल रहा है हमारे देश में, ये कोरोना का, उसमें मैंने मास्क बनवाया है। मेरे साथ में 100 से 110 महिलाओं के बीच में काम किया है, जिसमें उन महिलाओं को 40,000 से 50,000 के बीच में मास्क मेरे यहाँ तैयार हुआ है, अभी भी तैयार हो रहा है। इसके बाद से मैंने जो है और छोटा छोटा गृह उद्योग जो होता है, ये सरकारी ड्रेस, स्कूल का जो ड्रेस बनेगा मेरे ही महिलाओं के द्वारा, और समूह मैंने बनवाया है। कई गांव में मैंने समूह बनवाया है, उन्हीं समूह की महिलाएं मिलकर के ड्रेस बनाने का काम करेंगी। उसके बाद से अगरबत्ती बनाने का भी मैंने काम लिया हुआ है, और इसके बाद से राखी भी बनेगा। यही मेरी सोच है कि सारी महिलाओं को कुछ न कुछ रोजगार मिले। धन्यवाद। जिंदगी में जो भी उत्साह मिला है, जो मेरी सासू माँ थी, वो थी तो गांव की ही महिला, लेकिन उनको ये था, जब मेरी शादी हुई, मैं झारखंड की रहने वाली हूँ और मेरी शादी यहाँ देवरिया जिले में हुई। जब मैं वहाँ से यहाँ आई तो करीब 1 साल के बाद से मेरी सासू माँ ने कहा मुझसे कि तुम घर में ना बैठो, तुम बाहर जाओ, जा करके कुछ काम करो। तो मुझे लगा कि ये बताइए कि पहले जमाने की महिला है, जब उस समय हमारे यहाँ यूपी में तो सबसे ज्यादा पर्दा होता था, महिलाओं को कोई घर से बाहर निकलने नहीं देता था, और ये मेरे बारे में इतना ये सोच रही है कि बाहर जाओ। तो वो बोली, उस समय तो मुझे ये नहीं पता था कि मैं क्या करूं, कहाँ जाऊं, कहाँ मुझे जॉब मिलेगी, आगे मैं कैसे बढ़ूंगी। फिर कुछ दिन के बाद से उन्होंने कहा, जा करके तुम किसी स्कूल में टीचिंग का काम करो। तो चूंकि मुझे मन नहीं कर रहा था, फिर भी मैंने कुछ महिलाओं को इकट्ठा किया अपने गांव में है, एक बैनर मैंने बनवाया और सिलाई का मैंने केंद्र खोला, जिसमें 5 से 6 लड़कियों को मैं सिलाई सिखाने लगी। और सिलाई सिखाने के बाद से फिर मुझे ये लगा, जो लड़कियां मेरे पास आती थी तो मुझे यही लगता था कि आज मैं इन लड़कियों को सिखा रही हूँ। फिर जब मेरी पहली सैलरी जब मिली मुझे, मात्र 200 रुपया मैंने लिया उस लड़कियों से, और वो 200 रुपया जब पहली बार मुझे मिला तो मुझे लगा कि ये कितना अच्छा चीज है, और ये अपनी खुद की कमाई है, और ये मेरी मेहनत की कमाई है। और उसके बाद से कुछ ही दिनों के बाद से ये जो इंटरनेट साथी का जो ये आया था जागृति के माध्यम से, उसमें मैंने अपना फॉर्म भरा और 70 महिलाओं में मेरा सिलेक्शन हुआ था। तो सिलेक्शन होने के बाद से जैसे हम लोगों को एक एक स्मार्टफोन दिया गया था जागृति की तरफ से, उसके बाद से मुझे ये लगा कि नहीं, मुझे कुछ करना चाहिए। कुछ ही दिनों के बाद से मैंने कॉल सेंटर ज्वाइन किया। कॉल सेंटर में जब मैंने गया, कॉल सेंटर में जब मैं गई, वहाँ इतना संघर्ष वाला जिंदगी था, इतनी प्रेशर थी कि जो इंसान कॉल सेंटर में जॉब कर ले, उसके बाद से किसी भी तरह का कोई भी प्रेशर नहीं, उनके लिए कोई मुश्किल भरा नहीं होता है। तो वहाँ से मैंने रिजाइन कर दिया। करीब 2 साल तो मैंने वहाँ पे जॉब किया। उसमें हर तरह के लोग मिले और हर तरह की सीख मुझे मिली। तो रिजाइन करने के बाद से मैंने जो है ये जन शिक्षण का जो महिलाओं को सिखाया जा रहा है, पार्लर का, वो मैंने ले लिया। वो उसके सिखाने कुछ ही दिनों के बाद से मैंने एक हर घर लक्ष्मीबाई का प्रोजेक्ट किया था, जो हमारे साथ में स्वर्णा मैम भी थी, और उसको भी मैंने बखूबी निभाया। उसके करने के बाद से कुछ ही दिनों के बाद से फिर से मैंने सैनिटरी पैड लॉन्च करवाया, जो अभी भी चल रहा है। पहली बात तो है, मुझे ये जो है हौसला जो है अपने पति को देख करके मिलता है। उसके बाद दूसरी बात जो है, जब भी मैं कहीं जाती हूँ, किसी महिलाओं को मैं देखती हूँ कोई काम करते हुए, तो सबसे पहले मेरे मन में एक अभिलाषा जगती है, मुझे वो काम करना है, चाहे वो किसी भी तरफ से करना है। फिर मैं बैठ करके घंटों सोचती हूँ मैं किस तरह से करूँ, कैसे करूँ कि मैं आगे जाऊँ, और मुझे तो मिले ही कुछ पैसा, लेकिन मेरे साथ कुछ जो महिलाएं हैं, मैं कुछ उन महिलाओं को भी कुछ रोजगार दे सकूं। और ये ऊर्जा जो है, ये महिलाओं को भी देख करके, जो इस समय इतनी गरीबी चल रही है, इतनी बेरोजगारी चल रही है, उन सारी महिलाओं को देख करके मुझे ऐसा लगता है कि मेरे अंदर अगर वो ऊर्जा होती, वो शक्ति होती, मैं सक्षम होती, तो आज के डेट में एक भी महिला है तो मैं अपने यहाँ से वापस जाने नहीं देती। इसी ऊर्जा की वजह से जब भी मैं बैठती हूँ तो कुछ न कुछ काम के बारे में ही सोचती हूँ, किस तरह से मैं काम करूँ, किस तरह से मैं आगे बढ़ूँ कि कुछ महिलाओं को रोजगार मिले। पहली बात तो मुझे ये मजबूती और शक्ति जो है, मुझे अपने पति से प्रेरणा मिली है, और मेरे पति ही जो है मेरे पीछे हमेशा खड़े रहते हैं। जब भी मुझे किसी चीज की जरूरत पड़ी है, उन्होंने हमेशा मेरा सपोर्ट किया है। उसके बाद मेरी फैमिली है, मेरे परिवार के सारे लोगों ने मेरा साथ दिया है। मैं उन्हीं परिवार की वजह से आगे इस मुकाम पे पहुंची हूँ, और एक अच्छी खासी उद्यमी के तौर पे मैं जानी जाती हूँ। नाम है, लेकिन विभा जो एक उद्यमी भी है, एक गृहिणी भी है, एक माँ भी है, एक पत्नी भी है, एक बेटी भी है, और कुछ महिलाओं की एक उम्मीद बन चुकी हूँ आज के डेट में। जिस मेरे पास कई महिलाएं आती हैं एकदम से निराश होकर के, दीदी मुझे कुछ बताइए, मेरे लायक कोई काम बनाइए, कि मेरे लायक क्या काम है। मुझे उस समय लगता है कि मैं इस महिलाओं के लिए क्या करूँ, अपनी जी जान लगा देती हूँ कि कुछ न कुछ कहीं न कहीं से कुछ मिले, रोजगारी इन महिलाओं को दूँ। क्योंकि देखिए, एक दिन अगर आप पैसा देती हैं तो उन लोगों के लिए कोई महत्व नहीं है, अगर रोजगार देती हैं तो उनके लिए हमेशा के लिए हो जाएगा।
हाय, मेरा नाम पूजा है और मैं एक सोशल एंटरप्रेन्योर हूँ। अभी मैं अपने घर में बैठी हूँ, जहाँ से हम डिजाइन्स करते हैं और अपने काम करते हैं। So what gives me this leap of faith? I think it is just a strong positivity that I see around me. I try to find things which have worked and try to focus my energies on the things which have happened. And at the end of the day, I believe there is risk in everything, but you have to take that chance, you have to take that leap of faith, and that is when things actually work. I think I find my strength from my support system, be it my co-founders, my team, or my family. I think the fact that I have this strong support system around me inspires me a lot, and I don't think I will give up. So I think when we started 3 years back, it was very, very challenging for us to convince people of the idea that we are having. Over time, I think we have built that trust with the community, and a strong team has sort of come together to take this idea forward. So I believe that when you set out to solve a problem, you cannot do it alone. And that is when you have to take a team with you. So as a flag bearer, I feel one of my biggest responsibilities is to keep the team motivated, to keep them aligned, and give them their own freedom and ownership, and let them take their lead, and make sure that I'm available to give them direction, give them feedback, and as a team we move forward.
मेरा नाम पूजा शाही है। हम एक उद्यमी हैं। हम देवरिया जिला के एक छोटे से गांव सुरौली से हैं। हम मैक्रमे का काम करते हैं। मैम, हम काम तो शुरू किए थे 2009 से, लेकिन 2014 में हमको खुद से ये फील हुआ कि हम एक उद्यमी बन सकते हैं। जब भी हम कुछ नया देखते हैं मैम, तो वो हमको करने का मन करता है, और ज़्यादातर हमको ऐसी महिलाओं को देख के ऊर्जा आती है जो कुछ कर नहीं पाती हैं। उनके लिए हम कुछ करना चाहते हैं, वहीं से हमको हौसला मिलता है। जागृति यात्रा में गए थे, उस टाइम हमको ये फील हुआ कि हम भी बहुत कुछ कर सकते हैं। मेरे पास है वो कला जो हम लोगों के सामने अगर रखें तो हमको हर चीज़ से शक्ति मिलेगा, और हर मोड़ पे हमको कठिनाई तो बहुत आई है, पर रास्ता भी मिल गया है। जैसे छत्तीसगढ़ में बड़ी का काम होता है, यहाँ पे एकदम फेमस है बड़ी। छत्तीसगढ़ में खाने का आइटम बोलिए तो बड़ी लोग बताएंगे। यहाँ पे आए तो देखे महिलाएं इतनी सारी हैं, वो घर में बैठी हैं। उनको वो भी हमसे बोल रहे हैं शहर में रहते हुए भी कि कुछ काम ऐसा होता ना तो हम लोग करते। हम जब उनका बड़ी देखे और उनका मेहनत देखे तो मेरे अंदर खुद एक खुशी और एक ऊर्जा अलग से आया कि हम करें उसको, और अभी वो काम हम कर रहे हैं मैम। महिलाएं ही हमारी एक ऊर्जा हैं, जिनके साथ हम काम करते हैं वही मेरे लिए एक ऊर्जा है कि उनके लिए और अच्छा हम क्या कर सकते हैं, और उन्हीं लोगों से हमको ऊर्जा मिलता है। और जो जागृति एंटरप्राइज है, उनके टीम से जब भी हम बात करते हैं, हर समय एक नया ऊर्जा मिलता है। कभी भी हम कमज़ोर पड़ते हैं तो पिछले 9-10 साल से हमको जो भी सपोर्ट मिल रहा है जागृति से, हमको हर समय जब भी हम गिरने वाले रहते हैं, हमको उठाने में जागृति ही सपोर्ट करता है। मेहनत करते रहो, और वही मेहनत वही करो जिसमें आपको आपको और आपकी महिलाओं को लाभ मिले, जिसके साथ काम कर रहे हैं उनको लाभ मिले। एक उदाहरण के तौर पे हम बोलना चाहेंगे कि हम हैंडमेड ज्वेलरी का काम करते हैं, जो कि हम बाहर अभी भेज नहीं सकते। हम सोच में पड़ गए कि अभी हम क्या करें जिससे हमारी महिलाओं को रोजगार मिले। हम तुरंत कपड़े का मास्क बनवाना शुरू कर दिए और सैनिटाइजर, और फिर जब भी जैसे ही हमको मौका मिला डॉक्टरों से बात करने का, हम पीपी किट तैयार करवाना शुरू कर दिए। हमको बस कुछ करने का जुनून है, वही हमको प्रेरित करती है। हर समय कुछ नया करना चाहते हैं, कुछ नए दिशा में जाना चाहते हैं। हम एक अच्छी उद्यमी बनना चाहते हैं, और मतलब एक अच्छी उद्यमी जहाँ पे लोग ये जाने कि हाँ ये हर तरफ से एक उद्यमी है, ऐसा लोग हमको बोले। अभी सब लोग बोलते हैं कि हाँ पूजा शाही है, ऐसा ऐसा काम करती हैं, पर एक सही तरीके से उद्यमी अभी हम नहीं बने हैं, जो हम बनना चाहते हैं आने वाले 5 सालों में। जो भी मेरा ये वीडियो देखे, उससे हम बस यही बताना चाहते हैं, हर एक महिला में एक ऐसी ऊर्जा है जो कहीं ना कहीं वो कुछ अच्छा कर सकती है, और बहुत बड़ा उनके हर एक इंसान के अंदर एक हुनर है, जिसको वो तभी आगे निकल सकती है जब अपने काम के प्रति पागलपन हो, उसको बस जो काम वो करना चाहता है वही दिखे। आगे का उड़ान तो मैम, जो मेरा पहला काम है, वो जो हम ज्वेलरी बनाते हैं, ये सब काम है, उसको जो भी हम काम ऐसा नहीं है कि एक काम कर रहे हैं और दूसरे को पीछे छोड़ते जा रहे हैं। हमको जो चीज़ लेंगे हम साथ साथ करते हुए आगे की तरफ बढ़ेंगे। और मेरा हर एक राज्य में कनेक्शन बनाना चाहते हैं, हर एक देश में कनेक्शन बनाना चाहते हैं, और वो कनेक्शन बस बात करके नहीं, लोग मेरे प्रोडक्ट को देख के हमारी पहचान को जाने, हमारे जिले को जाने और हमारे गांव को जाने, और बस हमको ही ना जाने मैम, मेरी महिलाओं को जाने वो लोग, कि जो जिनके हाथ से वो बन के निकल रहा है।
Hi, I'm Rajeshri Sai. I'm an young entrepreneur and change maker. I run 2 companies and a non-profit, and currently now I'm sitting in my mother-in-law's puja room. I've always been very spiritually motivated, and I think that keeps me grounded, because I work a lot with empowerment of women, youth, children in rural areas and urban areas in India. And I always believe I'm an enabler, and hence spirituality is something that comes to the core of me when I am doing my work in the area of both Impactry, where we work with rural masses on data, and as well as when we work right now in the relief in the pandemic through the Hunger Collective. I would describe myself as a girl with a million dreams in her eyes. So I have always from the young been very particular that I want to be the change I want to see. In fact, so much so that when I was pregnant, I was almost 100% sure I would have a girl. And everyone was like, because it's the first child in the family, they all were expecting a boy. But I said, no, it'll be a girl, and she will change the world. So when my daughter came out, I had a cesarean, and when they lifted her out and they brought her to me, I said, welcome to the beautiful world, you're going to change it. So that's been my mission all along. I want to positively impact 5 million people by 2025. I started with 1 million a few years back. We are over 500,000 right now through the work of Impactry and the Hunger Collective. And that's why I would say I'm a girl with a million dreams. I want to leave the world as a much better place than what I was born into. And that's who I am, and that's what drives me. I'm also very stubborn. So I could be very stubborn, very resilient and relentless in terms of what I want to achieve, and that's me. I think my biggest strength comes from two sources. One, I am spiritual and I have a spiritual grounding in a guru, so there is a strength that I get from there. But I think the biggest strength of in my whole life is my family. My husband, my mother-in-law, my daughter, Kamlama, my parents, my brother, everyone, because I think at every stage as a women entrepreneur and change maker, it's hard to get things unless you have a support system that can ensure that they will take care of bits and pieces which are harder for you to manage while you go pursuing something. So I think that has been my biggest blessing. And having them involved in my business and causes has also been my biggest blessing, because my husband is my co-founder. So he brings a different dynamics and his own experience when we come to work at Impactry. At the same time, my support system at home, they take care of a lot of things. Like for Hunger Collective, when we didn't have people, my mother, my mother-in-law, Kamlama who stays with us, they all made calls to people, they helped in fulfillments. It's just that being a part of this whole family which allows me to grow is where I see most of my strength. In the darkest hour, I don't think they ever let me give up. I think the biggest leap of faith for me has, the first moment when I decided to be an entrepreneur, it was a big leap of faith for me, because I was a CS and a lawyer, and you're trained in a particular way. I remember at that point of time, because it was a recession, everyone told me, you have a job, are you mad leaving it? Like, why would you leave it? It pays your bills. My dad was an entrepreneur, so we were not earning much in that end, because he was still figuring his journey at that point of time. But I think collectively my dad was the only one who told me that, I've waited a lot of my life to get here and be an entrepreneur myself. If you have that chance and vision, just jump for it, you'll learn to swim. So I think at every point of time, that is my biggest leap of faith. I jump and I learn to swim. Like if you see the Hunger Collective, I remember when we were sitting on 28th of March and we said, this is migrant crisis, people are going hungry. And then we called up the district disaster management departments, we called up the civil defense, we said, how can you let people go hungry? And they simply said, there's a medical pandemic, madam. We are having meetings on food. It will take us 1 week to start thinking what to do with food. We'll get there, but it'll be a week later. And I think that was, the shock to me. I realized 1 week is too late. How will people go without food? So, we organized a tech platform. We quickly mapped Bombay around, and then we put people up on the map, and we said, if this is an NGO going to lane A, can we get the NGO to go to lane B where we have verified data? That night we served 100 people with the help of the Mahim Masjid, Mahim Dargah in the Masjid area. If you ask me how, I still remember many people told me, crazy, it's not going to happen. And that 100 gave me and my team so much confidence. We went on to do 1 lakh. I remember when we thought of the train of sending people back, right? Everyone told us, Tamil Nadu is the worst. They will never open the borders. I've been trying personally to go back 2 months, to go check on my family back, because I have a business also in Chennai. I'm just not able to go. So I realized that we were feeding a group of 10 pregnant women, 60 children and other migrant laborers who had come, and they were staying in really bad conditions in front of the Mahim station. They just didn't have anywhere to go. Like there were pigs roaming around in a line next to the pigs. It's that bad. And we were supporting them for 2 months. I think around the 15th of May, we all collectively decided in the Hunger Collective. By then we had Zia, who was a very big change maker, and she's a really passionate entrepreneur herself. And she came and told me, Rajshri, let's do one thing. We will get these people home. That's it. And then from there we began our journey. We have sent 10,000 people back home, millions of pregnant women. We're supporting them even after going back in terms of food and rations. helping them survive. If you ask how, I think I've surrounded, another thing I do instinctively is I surround myself with people, crazy people, who can't take no for an answer and who are willing to work till the last mile. Each of my volunteers, 40 of them across India, like I have people in Vizag, Ahmedabad, Bangalore, Chennai, Bombay, they've worked, Delhi, they worked for 2 months, like literally 8 hours a day. When the trains left, we were working till 3 in the morning. So it's not been easy, but all these people believe and very strongly believe that we can do it. And I think that's what gives me a lot of energy, because when all of you surround and you feel that there's a vision, we can do it, and we will, no matter what it takes, I think magic starts happening. So I think as an entrepreneur, I think one that we have to always be very aware of is that there are more crossroads than straight paths. I think, and this is what I've realized through my journey. I mean, I started my journey not as an entrepreneur. I was an activist who have traveled all across the country. I used to campaign for environmental rights. I worked with Almara on Right to Information, National Campaign Impact. We've stayed in abandoned buildings. We've camped on highways. I did that for a lot of part of my life. But then somewhere down the line, I think my family wanted a structured degree, because everyone in India wants to hold on to something. So I went through college, I qualified as a lawyer and a CS, company secretary. And then when I started working in a corporate, recession hit that year. So when I just joined the corporate, I had literally no job to do. So I think from that point, that was the first major crossroad in my life, because it is a hard time in 2008 and 9. We were being paid, but practically no work the whole day. So I think that's when I quit. In fact, after the Jagriti Yatra also, that gave me an additional push to quit. And somewhere after that, I began my journey as an entrepreneur, because I realized that there's only one life and we really need to change it. And on this journey also, there have been multiple crossroads, like COVID right now, when everyone would say that, it's back to recession, it's, bleak time for us economically. Yes, but then a lot of the work that we've been doing, and we've been believing in it. Through Impactry, we've been working with grassroots women, 10th pass, 8th pass, on collecting data and then helping them transform and scale programs from bottoms up. And I think that work, we've been doing it just for 4-5 years with, trying to understand it, grapple with it. But COVID is where it all came together, because through the Hunger Collective, using data, we've now served over 1 lakh people across the country with food and rations, and sent back home 10,000 migrants, which include pregnant women, children, about 600 children under 5. We've supported them. It's been so easy, our data tools that we have sent through WhatsApp, that even a homeless man who was in Andheri once called and told me, "Madam, I need rations." I asked him, "Where are you?" He just told me, "I'm sitting in front of an ATM in Andheri in HDFC Bank. That's my address." So we've been able to reach to the last mile with data, and that's where we see it culminating. So I would say we were at a crossroad then, but now we have, through the Hunger Collective, realized how powerful our tools are, and we're now converting that into a SaaS platform. So we're using what we've learned in the last 4 years to actually impact and scale in a much larger sense today than we ever have. So I know that was a crossroad, but we've been able to now get a straight path, I think, over the last 2 months. And I would say another part of where I was crossroad is that I've been working with women empowerment for a very long time. But when I was pregnant, and I got pregnant, I was selected as one of the 7 women entrepreneurs transforming the world. So I went to the US, and I went on very early stages through the US consulate. And I saw a lot of empathy and empowerment abroad for pregnancy. But in India, when I came back, it was very disempowering, because a lot of my clients chose not to engage with me because I was a woman who was pregnant. And many of them told me that, I don't know what your next 2 years will look at. I delivered at 4 o'clock, I was working till 12 p.m. 3 days after my delivery, I started work again. Not to prove anything, but because of the fact that for me, it was a natural process, giving a daughter into the world, getting her out. And I think, that is the next thing that I see myself working a lot through Impactry Social Foundation that we are launching, a lot around women's rights and hunger, which is something that is going to become real in this pandemic right now. excellence for me is having a very clear vision. B is having a team to actually help you get there. And C is, I think, the hardest part for me is trusting that team that they will get you there and giving them that space to just be themselves. So I think where I see myself in 5 years, well, I see myself in 5 years definitely positively impacting 5 million people across the globe, hopefully. So that's where I want, and that's the vision we have for Impactray. We are launching a SaaS platform in that end with our data and the learnings we've had. And I think the second thing which I've always honestly been scared of is, while I've been an entrepreneur and I'm scaling a for-profit, I've always been in two minds that should I, because a lot of my for-profit does work in the social space, right? So I've been really wondering that should I really have a non-for-profit also which reaches out to people. And I think that's become a lot more clear through the Hunger Collective for me. We've done it for 2 months now, and going forward I've put in my papers to register a foundation because I see that my life will be in two parts. One is serving people directly, and at the same time building an enterprise which makes money but also is sustainable and serves people. So in that sense, in 5 years, 5 million people, that's the target right now. So I think red forever has symbolized women's Sri Shakti in that sense, right? My daughter is called Sai Bhavani because she was born on the day of Sati Bhavani, on the second day of Navratri, on 10th of October. So, the red color, red, and the fact of goddess is something that is very close to my heart. And it symbolizes for me eternal power. It symbolizes flame, a flame that will not be ready to die down, and a flame that will reach its mark. I remember someone once told me, Tajshri, and he was one of my mentors, he told me, everyone is born with a purpose in the world, and your job should be to find what was the purpose for which your soul came to this earth. So red symbolizes that for me, finding that purpose for which I was born. I think I'm blessed. I'm 31 right now, but I've kind of figured out my purpose. So I think that flame inside, since I was 21 when he told me this, the last 10 years has been a search in trying to see what is the purpose, why did I come here? And I think that redness symbolizes that flame for me.
Namaste all, myself Vaishali. I come from a place called Nasik, a holy land with a rich cultural heritage. I spent my childhood there. सारा बचपन मेरा वही गुजरा. बड़ी खुशनुमा यादें हैं उस जगह से. काफ़ी खुशगवार बचपन था मेरा. Then after completing my schooling, I moved to Pune. Got an opportunity to work with Jagriti team in 2008. I took it immediately. One of my mentors, Sunanda, she came to me and she said that she wants some help. And I said, "ठीक है, कर देते हैं." She explained me the work of Jagriti and the way she is associated with, and asked me like if I could be a part of it. I said, "Yes, I can." That's how I got to, that's how I got associated with the Yatra team. I was part of selection. I was taking care of almost thousands of applications. We used to take care and evaluate and then take a decision whether they could be a part of it or no. It was an amazing process. I used to go through applications, where they all used to talk about their dreams, what they want to do for society, what they want to do for themselves, how they want to be wants to see them in future, and it was amazing. कहीं ना कहीं जाके मुझे अभी लगता है कि जैसे मैं खुद को उनमें ढूंढ रही थी. I used to get connected with them, and then the entire process has become so interesting that it kept me going on and on year after year since last 13 years almost. Her application used to talk to me. उनके सपने, about क्या difficulties उन्होंने अभी तक सही है, क्या देखा है. I used to always come across very interesting human beings. आप अभी राजश्री, पूजा शाही, पूजा राय और सुवर्णा से मिली, विभा से मिली. All these were yatris on this train. It makes me very happy when I see them successful in their life, in their ventures, when they are achieving their goals. When I select a candidate and when I meet them on the day of the yatra, which is every year 24th of December, I keep finding in that person, कि ये मैंने सोचा था और ये अब क्या है. And you would believe, I used to find that person more interesting. और फिर जब 15 दिन हम उनके साथ बिताते हैं ट्रेन पे, I get to know them more and more and more. It makes me happy. It makes me happy when they achieve their goals. When I see them through that 15 days journey, growing up, developing themselves. पहले दिन किसी से बात करने से डरने वाला या डरने वाली शाय सी लड़की या लड़का एंड ऑफ द यात्रा तक अपना खुद का स्पीच देने के काबिल हो जाता है. ये देख के मुझे बहुत खुशी होती थी. And this is something, keeps me going on year after year, taking this process of selection. It has taught me many things. It has given me confidence. I have learned many things. And this process has helped me to connect with my own son. Having a teenage son, there were many challenges, which yatra and the process, my role has made me very easier. मेरा relationship उसके साथ strong होते गया. It's not just the mother and the son or the mentor or a friends. It's much beyond that. Now we are two equal individuals. Our relationship has reached to that maturity, and I totally give credit to my role with Jagriti in selections. So along with my work with Jagriti, I also give a very little time, though right now, for the welfare of stray dogs, stray animals. It's a very बड़ा छोटा सा हिस्सा है मेरा इसमें. काफ़ी कुछ करने की ज़रूरत है और मैं करना चाहती हूँ. धीरे धीरे मैं उसमें मेरा टाइम देना चाहती हूँ, जो फ़िलहाल शायद अभी मैं ना कर सकूँ. Going ahead, I definitely wanted to create a shelter for these stray animals. And again, as I said, somewhere after Banga coming to my life, ये इच्छा मेरी ज़्यादा से ज़्यादा तीव्र होती गई कि मैं कुछ करूं. Banga had a very good life with me, but that was not the fate for all other furry kids. And another inspiration, I would say, one of my friends, Swarnadeepa Rao, who is also working in the same sector, a very passionate, kind-hearted woman. who has given home to 10 such animals right now and wish to give it to thousands like me.
Namaste, I'm Suvarna and I'm from Pune. Um, Talking about myself, I'm an HR professional and I'm working with one of the IT company, partnering there, and I'm also working with Jagriti on the incubation process. Last, like 3 years back, we did one project called Internet Sathi. That is where I've been moved on myself, what I was doing earlier, the routine job, and maybe it was just I was living, but I think now after doing that project, I feel I have a purpose of my life. I've been mentoring and training 2,400 women there in Eastern UP, and on the digital literacy, on financial literacy, and going back to their village. Those 2,400 women have trained around 1.7 million rural women, which itself is a positive impact. Not because they are digitally aware now, but because they have been able to connect to this part of the world, where today, for us, digital life is like more or less routine life for us. But for them, it was not that. So I think this is the connection between the two worlds I can see. And my personal life is like I'm mother of two young boys. One is around 23 and the other one is 18, doing good in their studies. And a great family we make. Definitely work should be done like worship, because you put your whole heart when you worship your deities. It's about doing right things when nobody is around you, nobody is watching you. When my total work experience is around 17 years, but in 2016, when I went to Devariya to do this Internet Sathi project, the demand of the project was I shifting to Devariya for around 16 months. So, leaving my family back, leaving my children back here in Pune. So I think that worship has really given me the prasad of training 2,400 Internet Sathis, making them tech savvy. And then they went back to their villages and they trained around 1.7 million women. They have made them digitally aware. So that is what, when you do your work as a worship. Excellence for me is a mindset and not an afterthought. We have to have right attitude towards the people and towards the work, whatever we do. I feel it is more about being confident, being happy about what you do, and being presentable. An excellence for women is, a journey from heart, a journey of beauty from heart to achievement of your goals. Roads, crossroads and pathways. Every person in his or her journey of life come across the crossroads where you are into dilemma that which road to choose, where to go, and whether that road would be good or bad. I think there are also few choices which we make. There are smooth roads, your journey is happy. So for me, the life is not only what you achieve. You are not defined by what you achieve, but it is also how you have survived.
Hi, my name is Vanita Vishwanath. I am a board member of Jagriti and also head of its Women's Center of Excellence that it has started in the Devariya district of the northern state of Uttar Pradesh in India. This is the state from which some of the women that you heard on this video actually are doing their work. Seizing opportunities to create and craft is what women actually do in India. Rajashri, Vibha, both the pujas spoke about the embedding of the cultural, the familial, and the spiritual within themselves that has helped them to get the energy and the shade for the flowering of enterprise that they spoke about. Vibha expressed her inspiration as coming from a very large fabric embroidered panel that she and 25 other women worked on last year. It depicts Rani Lakshmibai. Rani Lakshmibai from Uttar Pradesh is actually a symbol of courage and resistance because she fought along with Indian forces at the beginning of the struggle for independence in the late 1800s. The Women's Center of Excellence will enable many more Lakshmi Bais like Vibha to ride out to conquer. Perhaps not on horseback like Rani Lakshmi Bai herself, but on vehicles of the future. By manufacturing personal protection kits, providing food and transport to migrant laborers to go home, the women of Devariya and all over the country have shown that they can turn their values into enterprises of compassion and care. These values will be embodied in the architecture, a very unique architecture of the Jagriti Enterprise Center, of which the Women's Center of Excellence is one center of excellence. Pujas, Vibhas, Rajashris across the country and the values of family, spirituality, and Indian culture will be at the very root of the Women's Center of Excellence.
Om Mahalakshmi Vignaye Vishnu Priyaye Dhimahi Om Mahalakshmi Vignaye Vishnu Priyaye Tanno Lakshmi Prachodayat Tanno Lakshmi Prachodayat.
Hello and thanks to everyone who have been watching the India program at WOW Global 24. We'd like to say thanks to the WOW Foundation for bringing the festival together, and to their global founding partner, Bloomberg, and founding partner, MasterCard, for making the foundation's work possible. So the Red Catalogues, part of the WOW festival, captured stories by Pooja, Vibha, Vaishali, Suvarna, Rashri, and the summing up by Vanita, truly bringing out the essence of what is tradition and transition, classic and contemporary, while keeping alive the possibilities of how you continue to evolve with the times. And the color red invokes sisterhood, like we see now, embodies power, descent, bond, marriage, and creation with rebirth. Well, the lockdown brought a very innovative way for us to compile these stories. The women shot the film on their gadgets on a landscape mode, and thus we could have a peek into the ordinary lives of these outstanding women entrepreneurs. And I take this opportunity to thank Jagriti and the Women's Center of Excellence, which is set up in Deoria in Eastern UP, a district of India, and also the Global WOW Festival team, which has brought us together to have these conversations together. And I invite every one of you, all the audience members who have been with us, to really go onto the social media platforms and connect with WOW Global. And a big thank you to Jude Kelly and Domino for opening up this entire world, and we're able to reach. Now I'm going to be connecting to Malaysia very soon. And I'm delighted at this point to hand over to Rosanna, and I welcome her to share the next part and unveil that for us. Namaste from Mumbai, India.
Thank you so much, Gauri, for that amazing closing, and it was really exciting watching the film, and I look forward to following up on the work that the women are doing, and also the work that you are doing in India. So hello everyone and welcome. I am Rosanna Issa from Malaysia, and I'll be taking you through the contribution of Malaysia to the WOW Global 24 Festival. I am an activist on Muslim women's rights in Malaysia, and together with a group of activist friends, we have come together and we are delighted to be partnering with the WOW Foundation to bring you important and urgent discussions from Malaysia, as well as some fantastic performances from artists and performers from all around Malaysia. So actually for this 1 hour program, we will be taking you on a journey following Malaysia's independence in 1957, beginning with the first parliament session in 1959, and along the years where women have pushed at every step of the way to be recognized for their role in nation building, to be represented in decision making, to be heard in their demand for equal pay, and for the enactment of the first ever Domestic Violence Act in Southeast Asia and the Muslim world. And for more women to take their place as full and equal citizens of Malaysia, demanding to be heard, to be seen for what they are and what they do, and taking on and addressing head-on the challenges in the 21st century, especially the challenges right now in relation to our democracy and in the midst of the global COVID-19 pandemic. I am proud to present to you Malaysia's lineup of 9 wonderful women for the WOW Global 24 Festival, and they are artist and musician Alina Murang from Sarawak. We have Heidi Kwa from Refuge for Refugees. We have Jean Vanisha and Aisha Hanna from Parliament Digital, which is a youth-led coalition gathering 222 representatives nationwide, debating on policy recommendations and to test the visibility of virtual parliamentary democracy. We also have filmmaker Nadira Ilana from Sabah, which is off the island of Borneo, which is also a part of Malaysia. We have a pro wrestler showcasing, what she does in the ring. Her name is Nor Phoenix Diana. We also have Kira Yusri from the 111 initiative that aims to ensure that there is 50% female representation in the lower house of Malaysia's parliament. We also have spoken word poet Sheena Baharudin. And finally, we have musician, singer, and songwriter Takahara Suwiko. So this is the first time that we are working with WOW, and we are all really very, very excited to be a part of this. We look forward to, we are very, very happy, to be a part of this. We hope that you'll also get involved in the WOW Global 24 Festival conversations on social media using the hashtag WOW Global 24. So we'll see you soon. And to kickstart the program for Malaysia, we present to you the women whose shoulders we are all standing on now. These are the women of Malaysia.
Now, to kickstart the Malaysian channel of WOW's 24-hour global festival, you will be watching the first of 3 pieces that I will be sharing with all of you for this event. And this first poem is entitled Ask Me Where I Came From. And the intention behind this poem is very simple and clear, which is to explore the idea of what it means to be a Malaysian woman. And if you really look into that concept, we are going to find one that is sophisticated, that is multi-layered, that is deeply and richly rooted in the idea of stories. Stories are never meant to be silenced. Stories are meant instead to be shared with the rest of the world. Ask me where I came from, and I would say, I came from the language of mud, where newborn tongues are swaddled in bati. I came from the lente of the letter Alif and stretched syllables sung by women with skin that smell of dusty scrolls. I came from the edge of folklores, where the sea seasons the wind and lofty pine trees dance the wronging. I came from rice, shaped into gullet-sized spheres in my mother's coarse palm. I came from swarthy skin, peeking at the sun behind a veil of bedak sejuk, where the shadows of the layang-layang and the light of the wayang kulit are of equal weight.
I came from falling and the calculated peeling of scabs, where backbones coo to the sweet tunes of the dodoi and curve to the shape of the bouncing cradle. I came from a babel of bodies rumbling at the slightest promise of storm, where mantra, saja, puisi, dan zikir are all eager to empty into rain. I came from a constant state of unraveling.
Kalau you asyik fikir pasal orang lain, you won't go anywhere. At the end of the day, you kena buat benda yang you happy. Saya seorang ahli gusti profesional. So if you have a passion or dream, just go for it. Selagi you tak cuba, selagi tu you tak tahu apa you punya kebolehan. Bila saya bergusti, saya dapat keluarkan satu persona yang saya tak tahu yang saya ada. Dan sebabkan gusti jugalah saya gain more confidence. Waktu kecil dulu memang sangat-sangat pemalu dan very reserve lah. So bila saya join wrestling, saya dah kena buang malu saya. Saya kena keluar daripada kotak selesa saya. Sejak pada itu, Phoenix jadi saya punya persona. Sukan gusti ni dia beza dengan sukan lain sebab kita bercerita tapi melalui perlawanan. Coach memang tak ada beri layanan yang special. Lelaki dengan perempuan sama je. Bila nak train tu, coach suruh kita orang train dengan lelaki. Pada mulanya memang sangat suffer. Sebab saya tak pernah ada sports background. Tapi lama-lama saya boleh cope dengan dia punya training. After 3 years into wrestling, saya lebih selesa bergusti pakai tudung berbanding pakai topeng. Semasa buka topeng tu rasa sedih dan gembira. Sedih sebab topeng tu has been part of my journey. Gembira sebab I can finally be more of me. Saya buat wrestling ni dah almost 4 tahun dan jujur saya cakap memang ada rasa nak give up. Sebab saya rasa tak boleh nak berjaya. Ada female wrestler, they look more appealing. Jadi promoter yang dekat luar lebih gemar untuk book mereka. Tapi saya fikir balik kenapa saya masuk wrestling dan kenapa saya hadir ke semua kelas. Dan macam Phoenix juga, saya bangkit balik. My dream is to become a full-time professional wrestler. I want to make a name for myself in Southeast Asia. Lepas tu pergi Europe and gain more experience. I think that's how I'm gonna be a better wrestler.
The 111 initiative see 50% of women in parliament. This is because there are currently 222 members of parliament in the Dewan Rakyat, or the lower house of the Malaysian parliament, and we feel that since women make up 50% of Malaysian population, there should be no reason why there's no 50% representation in parliament. Hi, my name is Kira. I am 26 years old. I am the co-founder of Undi 18 and also leading the 111 initiative campaign. I started Undi 18 with my partner Tharma when we were in the US in 2016 as we were students, and this year we are working on it full-time to further empower more young people in Malaysia to embrace their democratic values. One of the problems that we've identified in regards to women representation is not necessarily not enough women interested in politics. And the solution to that, I believe, is not just about imposing quotas. It's about how do we look at the political culture in Malaysia overall that empowers women, that mentors women, that provides an equal amount of playing field when it comes to women's political participation. And the problem somewhat is similar to youth political participation, right? When we look at young people's participation or women's participation, are they seen as a diversity quota? Are they only seen you're a woman MP because you're a woman? That's not how it should be. And for us, and the purpose of this campaign, which is made up of about 80% young women from various demographics and backgrounds, we feel that we want to push or spark a conversation in regards to political culture in Malaysia. When you look at political parties, for example, why do we still have women wings? Why do we still have ketua wanita or women leader of political parties when there's no reason except to give a seat, just to give a position to women, and that's not how it should be. And we had a similar thinking capability. There is no absolute reason why there should be separation. So for us and our campaign, we hope to be able to run programs, create conversations, and most importantly, asking existing political parties, asking existing male political leaders, what are you doing to push for more diversity within your own party? What are you doing to mentor more young women, more youth even, to ensure that your party represents the Malaysia that we all want to see? So that's mainly the work of the 111 initiative. I think women's wings of party are not entirely irrelevant because they do good work, right? When you look at how many of the women's wing of political parties, you see them campaigning for candidates. You see them going door to door, speaking to constituents. You see them preparing for campaign ceramah, campaign lectures. You see them on the ground, selling t-shirts, asking for donations. These are the work that women also contribute to a political party. I think the question that we need to ask afterwards is that how are they involved in the decision-making process as well? Are we just using them to garner votes? Are we just using women to do the difficult work, the dirty work, without involving their voices and their perspectives when it comes to lawmaking and even decisions made within the political party? How many political parties' supreme councils actually have women at the top, actually have women even involved in these circles when it comes to making decisions, especially in Malaysia, where politics is so much about coalition politics? How many times are young people or women's voices are being taken into account when decisions like these are being made? So I think that's also one of the bigger questions that we need to ask as young people, or especially as young women who want to make it, who want to be a politician, who want to represent our community. Before we can say that we represent our community, do we even know whether we're given the space and the platform to speak up? I think that is the important question that we are trying to ask. If you look globally, the world is ready for female leadership. The world is ready for more female voices in corporate governance, world governance, political governance. Look at, right now we're in the COVID-19 pandemic, which is the reason why we are doing this whole event anyway. You can see that countries that has female leadership or strong female leadership have shown very different results when it comes to the COVID-19 cases. I hope that this proves that, Malaysia in particular is ready for a more powerful female leadership. We've already had one female deputy prime minister. Is it so crazy? Is it so alien of an idea to have a female prime minister as well? I don't think so. I think we are past due for a Malaysian female prime minister.
Berhati-hati wahai para pecakap, kerana dunia ini ada wanita. Wanita yang punya banyak kerana, yang punya wang dan juga punya kuasa untuk melemahkan punai yang selemah lalang mudah dikawal nafsu yang kan menarikmu ke neraka. Kerana iman yang senipis bawang dikupas begitu saja sehingga akalmu melayang terbang ke udara. Akal yang konon 9 hilang entah ke mana. Adakah ini rupanya ketua keluarga yang tak reti jaga, bodoh yang meliar. Mengapa perlu dibilang awas pada wanita, walhal yang buat hal semua setan tak guna. Kan perempuan ni lemah tak reti jaga diri. Apa kata suruh laki pakai otak sendiri? Pakai otak sendiri. Pakai otak sendiri.
During the COVID-19 pandemic, there has been a spike of hate speech targeted towards the foreign workers in our country, and this includes the refugee and migrant community. This has been further amplified following the arrivals of a few boats from Myanmar that came to our borders. People think that these foreigners bring in the virus, so it became a debate about them and us. But our team chose to see it differently. We chose to look at them as people who are hurting. We chose to look at them as humans who are in need. And because of that, we have worked with a collective of 4 organizations to serve over 48,000 refugee communities over the past 13 weeks with grocery aid so that they can continue putting food on their table for their families. Hi, my name is Heidi. I am the founder and director of Refugee to the Refugees, a non-profit organization that seeks to raise awareness regarding the plight of refugees in Malaysia, as well as provide education for refugee children. We started back in 2012, started when I was 18 years old. Working with the community, working with the refugee community, got me understanding what privilege looks like a lot more. I went in to teach and to give, but these kids taught me so much more in return. 4 months into teaching, we went into the headmaster's office and said, hey, college starts for us, we need to focus, that's what our parents tell us to do. And that's why the headmaster told us the school was about to be closed down due to lack of funds. I remember at that very moment, I started thinking that I was pursuing higher education, something that I didn't really need to. I mean, growing up as a city girl, I knew that I would be going to college one day, but these kids were being robbed of their only access to education, and what was I going to do about it? And that's how Refugee to Refugees started as a project and then turned around into a non-profit organization. A lot of times Malaysia acts as a transit point before refugees get resettled to countries like the US, to Australia, to New Zealand. And this transit can take anywhere from up to 5 to 10 years or even longer. Because of the limbo that refugees are in, and because they don't have access to basic human rights, it is often a big struggle for them in the country, trying to survive, trying to feed their families, trying to keep a roof over their heads while keeping safe before they get resettled onto a safer country. As of April 2020, there are about 180,000 refugees registered with the UNHCR. These refugees come from many countries like Pakistan, Somalia, refugees from Syria, and a large community come from Myanmar, representing the Chin and the Rohingya community. Refugee to Refugees have about 35 schools under umbrella. Because refugees in Malaysia do not have access to education, as an organization, we strive to provide these kids with an education that empowers them and prepares them for when they get resettled. That is why we run schools using international syllabuses so that they can be prepared for resettlement when the time comes. At the moment, we have about 3,000 kids registered with us in our schools. And over the years, you've seen these kids grow in leaps and bounds. You know, when we first started 10 years ago, these kids couldn't speak a word of English. They couldn't read or write in English at all. We've actually got this kid, her name is Bochin, and she just received a scholarship in one of the top universities in the US. The heart of it is for the community to come a full cycle, to end up giving back to their own communities and giving a voice to their own communities. As much as I believe in being a voice for the refugee community, I also really strongly believe in giving them back the voice and including them in decision making and giving back to their communities.
As much as I want to freestyle, every time I do decide to give it a try, I feel like a skipping rock, thinking it can walk on water like Jesus. And this has something to do with me thinking just too much about words before I speak, like what and where and how to use them. And maybe that is why I choose the poet, because words to me matter. But what's the point if you're quiet when the moment comes for you to speak the truth? So I have taught myself to listen and then respond in real time with poetic conviction, like today, like yesterday, like tomorrow, like say. Did you know that the word matter in bahasa ialah materi, yang bermaksud bahan atau perkara yang menyatukan akal dengan hati? Jadi bila dikata nyawa itu berarti, pastikan ia termeterai dalam hidup kita hari-hari. Karena the word matter also means a story, a sequence of events embodied, so check it. The word materi and matter both go back to the word mata, a word meaning mother, which is the same word last uttered by George Floyd before he drowned under the knee of another. Mungkin juga ianya kata terakhir yang ditutur oleh bibir 32 Rohingya yang maut in the Bay of Bengal. Seperti sang putra Nepal yang baru-baru ini dijumpa mangkat tak dijulang di balai polis jenjang. Usah perlu berfikir terlampau panjang. There is no difference between these murders and the first blood spilled by the hands of Cain. A mother still wails in pain, not the loss of Habil. So yes, it is a substantial matter that matters, that we all speak out together. And if we aren't able, then let our limbs do the job. And if we still can't, then let it grow wild from the cracks in the concrete of our subconscious. Biarkan ia tumbuh bernafas. Let its bark be equally vicious to its bite. Let it catch fire. Let it burn bright in the forest of the night. Burn bright in the forest of the night. Let the world see this fearful symmetry, this darkness we have exchanged with the powers that be for the comfort of a good night. Sleep.
Midang, midang, karudang daun kiran.
Midang Midang is an old Kelabit song, and I learned it from Tepot Ira in 2015. And I recorded it in 2016 with our other cousin Josh, and here we are today, 4 years later, making its music video.
So we managed to get like 2 takes, and hopefully we got something out of that 2 takes.
Sarah and I both half Kelabit. We're a very small community. We're about 4,000 people, and our language is endangered, which means that it could die off or disappear in our generation. And this song is in the Kelabit language.
From the beginning, we kind of had the same vision in terms of like preserving culture, but also making it relevant. A lot of time, the misconception is something that is old
has to be preserved as it is.
Yeah, but I think that, you know, just as Elena has kind of given her own rendition to an old song, I think visually we were also able to do that.
We're on the way to Barrio now, and 11 of us flying to Barrio. So we're all on 3 different flights with mixed feelings. we have a big challenge with our luggage allowance because we're only allowed 10 kilos each.
We've got so much gear, and the plane can only take so much, so we're just trying to figure out if we can actually get all our stuff onto the plane and to Barrio. We don't know that yet. Okay.
And then we have to figure out how to get it back.
Check it out, man. It made it here. It made it here.
It was actually kind of nerve-wracking at the same time because we only had really just one shot at this because our team flew in from everywhere.
Give me something.
This is kain songket on the loom in Kuching, Sarawak, and it's by a social enterprise called Tanoti. Well, I wanted to try and work specifically with Sarawakian fashion designers, and we managed to do it.
Dear Martin, I baptized the dress in the sea of Tusan Beach, Miri, your hometown.
I think in selecting the locations for the music video, besides Barrio, we chose to shoot at Tusan in Miri.
When we shot at Tusan Beach, that was my first time there, and it's beautiful. It's so stunning.
We had a lot of people who came alongside us as we were going along to help us, and I think that was really, really great. People from the community, people from families, and that actually contributed to us being able to do the shoot well and smoothly, I would say. So we're really, really thankful for every single person that came along every step of the way.
Maria. My name is Nadir Elana. I am a filmmaker from Kota Kinabalu, which is a coastal city located in Sabah, Borneo, Malaysia. Even though as a Sabahan, I don't have a cinematic language or cinematic history, I think the process of me trying to make films is trying to understand what does a Kadazan Dusun film look like visually if a Malay film doesn't really speak for my identity, for example. So a lot of my films are actually really inspired by conversations that I've had with my parents or grandparents or just like older people in general. I guess I'm also a little bit of what you would call an old soul. But definitely talking to elders has been an excellent resource for history. And so one of the stories that I managed to do a couple of years ago for a mass media platform. One of the stories I chose is actually from my grandmother's blog.
Josie was from North Borneo and Samad from Selangor, Malaya.
The first time I went to Malaya, we took the ship called MB Raja Brook to Singapore. The trip from Jesselton to Singapore would take us 5 days.
After arriving in Singapore, Josie's family would have to take another 9-hour journey on a night train to Kuala Lumpur.
And I saw my husband walk over to this old man and then hug his old man. So I understood that this old man must be my father-in-law.
And so people who are not aware of the geography of Malaysia, today it takes about 2.5 hours to fly from Kota Kinabalu to Kuala Lumpur. And Malaysia is sort of like separated by the South China Sea, which is a very large body of water. Hence why media is like so important in terms of just being able to glue these narratives together. In this story, it's my grandmother's talking about her experiences of the first time that she had to travel with young children over to Peninsular Malaysia and how difficult it was back then. But the subtext of it was it's a love story between Borneo and the peninsula. You know, I believe in us, getting to know each other a lot better, but it's very hard to do that when the voice or the control of these narratives perpetually comes from Peninsular Malaysia. So another thing that I've also tried to do in my own personal work, apart from producing films, is also that I work as an independent film programmer. And I realized as well that apart from telling your own stories, because sometimes you can make these films and people will gaslight you because you're the single only voice. But when you do a short film program together, you watch 3 films back to back, then it becomes a conversation. So I've done film programs as well that are just like focused on East Malaysian filmmakers or independent filmmakers. And I think a lot of what's contributed to my process as well as being a minority is I am very adamant on uplifting other people along with me. And I don't see that as like, oh, this is a me thing. I see that as that's what female leadership is about. It's about nurturing. It's about growing your community. And as a film programmer, I feel that, or a producer, I have that chance to provide opportunities to people who are outside of that male-dominated peninsula status quo narrative. Tangan is unique to Kadazan Dusun culture. It's a form of storytelling that is told in a way that is very sing-song. And so one of the things that I knew that I wanted to do when I did this film residency is to find an elder who could do it in that form. And we were quite fortunate to find Ina Keloy who could do that. But even then, she can only sing the song like halfway and then half of it is spoken. So it almost felt like when we got that story, it was like just at that point where we were about to lose it. But this is what we got at the end of the day, and it's a beautiful story called We Must Be Clever Like the Snails.
Tatokal bakadi nga talo tadaw turo taon turo ulan na magadaw. Ngasa na di kakat inuman diri ngayon pebawangan ng arasak ng ami. Pamanaw na di kakay kara diri magimduwaig. Nga siya kakawag diri nindakod nila di kayo nga katulungan iti sa dat waig dat isa pa tempat nga lintuon na kaya di nga ida inom nga agumot tamada siput dahiri di may pwede kakadikaray siput di na pingagapaan po di kakadikaray siput nga bari kakadisiput kiampun kaya na kada kaya gapo sebab nga ikay nga iti dagay dat kapasiyan nga kadisiput nga ataga di kara mas di manila po nga bare kadi katuwa disiput ampunay kay po ano ta ko perjanjian kakadisiput nga boleh kakadi kara nga managjanji ta ko turo atadaw di kasambayan na ang pertandingan tako da manangkos nung saya tasiyaw kakadit kara ato kam kumura kayo da haiti da tinggal haiti tako kakadit siput irin lagi pengkur tako kamanang kaka boleh ba kadit di siput diri ni ibak na di kara dari minuli beres kakadi katua di siput tangan ako tindal ko nogi may takot tikid jagwas na kayo dot kumaram kakadi di katua di siput kakadi tangan anak di siput ibak na di kayo ladi nga na di tikid dito ni karam di guwas di kayo dagisam na nakarikasi timpak dan nulo sebab nga pagangatan na pa dit kara da manangkos na gisam da karkat sirin nulo nung saya tasiyaw manangkos ngapay ko ragi tasiyaw itontul siput abis nga enggag adala da takad nga ri sarah dala di supaya kamanang minemanta sa dia elaw ni sakot tiri guasta kayo jadi karkat adi katurut ta daw di nga karkat adi kara nga ako na di serat ako mula da manangkos kakadi kara ba amako na kakadit ikatua di siput nah rayat na yola dihirid itisan di bawang dari penangkus na dia ladi nga herid tahuri di wakan siput dit aw minementad sakat dawatu kayo nga erak na kay karadi to memang pemanang nila tasaraw nga penangkos na kay karadi nga tul kana kadit untuk disiput na here guas na kayo disidu igulo atok nakapagulo mati malaya la kakadi kara panangkos niya ladi nga kadihere kawagus sakit nga tul kana kadit dituntul isiput nga atok kasiyaw na malaya la kakadi kara nga barabis di kara na manangkos padahal na pa siput na nga nakasadya naman tayo laman ni sakat di guas na kayo panangkos na di kara di kawago nga tol ako kakadisiput na rin nakagod sa do gulo ato kadikara nga huyan di kara mga songas pa di suada merikaw di kara suada sang intinggo na huyan tol kana kagod disiput na rin na sa do na akala di kara di na bare kadi kadala di pagula di kara di nga bare kadi kadisiput na nakamanang kay na diti nga ikay na dia kanu laway ka dia ka di siput nga asusa na dia ginaw di kara nga pa dala do ninumay iri na dia tak sara di tuntuler jadi pengkura pa ita ka to sabaga ay manusia nga pengkura ta ka dat mga tas di kasusaan na ginata ko nga magyum ta ko sara supaya kasaliwan ta ko di kasaan na ginata ko panday-panday ta ka umusaro ngay panday tuntul to nga haka dingalongan nga panday alam nga atas supaya salamat yati adita ko nga paghihom to ko na sarata ko supaya salamat ta ko numi kasana ginata ko pagyum ta ko pangatas iri supaya edu ikasana ginata ko na iri na
So in Malaysia, Parliament sits with 222 members of Parliament and a speaker and a deputy speaker. And we were thinking, okay, let's put into detail and do it as best as we can, try to mimic the Parliament onto an online platform. And that was the big idea.
In late February, we were experiencing a political change in Malaysia, and that is like unprecedented political change in Malaysia. What's important is that there has been a change, and that is an undemocratic one in the political scene. So that also happened when Malaysia is already experiencing COVID-19. A lot of people were looking at really form cabinet to come up with solutions on how to face COVID and how to face these political changes and also how to face consequences that will come after COVID-19. So when it was announced that Parliament is going to sit for one day, and that is also only going to be like a speech from the Agong, a lot of people are questioning, why aren't you taking this matter seriously? Why is there no urgency in sitting and discussing and putting aside your political differences?
There was an article that said that Parliament would take a year to adapt to an online sitting.
2 years.
A year and a half, I think. And it was ridiculous. We looked at it and we were like, If school children can do it, stay-at-home moms can do it and sell products from home, why can't Parliament sit and pass laws?
So initially we have like this one objective, which is to tell the government that you have to convene, you have to have a parliament sitting, discuss things, and do whatever it takes for you to solve a lot of these issues. But then, like, it also turned out that we also have like all these other additional objectives where we also want young people to understand how parliamentary system works. For example, like it's easy for anyone to say, can a government do this? Can a government think about things? Why is the government doing anything? So by participating in Parliament Digital, they understand that it's not as easy as, okay, let's just talk about this and then 1, 2, 3. What's more important is that all the participants, all 222 representatives of Parliament Digital are all independents. This is very important because we do not want to bring politics into this. It is about politics, but we don't want to take into account the whole situation that is engulfing Malaysia right now into Parliament Digital, because that's what we're trying to avoid. So all they need to focus on are the issues and how to solve them, and to teach them about good politics.
So a big part of our initial conversations were centered around how do we want to present this to the public? How do we rope in young people? How do we make sure that their voices are equally represented? How do we want to build the 222 candidates? And it was very consuming trying to think of a way to reach the entire nation, because we decided on two things. We wanted young people to represent their constituent, and we wanted them to be between the ages of 15 and 35.
Also, they have to be, we want to be very inclusive. Women participation,
Indigenous
people, even the migrant communities, the undocumented, yes, exactly. So, trying to reach into all of these communities are not as easy as we thought.
I think just setbacks on internet connection,
Yes.
that was a big thing we had. We didn't want people to not take part because they couldn't afford it, or because they didn't have a device that they could use.
Yeah. And we're doing this while we are all in lockdown, so there's no possible way for us to go into like the jungle to get indigenous people to sign up for this. And even if they want to sign up, there's a lot of restriction when it comes to infrastructure.
So the entire dissemination method was just social media, and calling all our friends and making sure that the message got out in their small communities.
Interestingly, all of the politicians, political groups, political parties across Malaysia are actually helping us to promote this. Like, they have been retweeting, posting, sharing, WhatsApping.
Government and opposition.
Yes, both sides.
So when we released the form, we were maybe expecting 100, 200 people. We thought we'd be struggling with responses. No, within the first 3 hours, we'd already received about 300 to 400 people signing up, and then the numbers just grew and grew and grew by the hour. By the first day itself, we hit about 1,005 people signing up. We closed applications on the 14th of June. At directly midnight, we looked at the count and we were astounded. It was 6,300 over applications, and we had this intense weight to pick 222 young people, all representation. We wanted people who were from different ethnicities, we wanted people who were differently abled, we wanted people who were from the indigenous communities, we wanted to make sure that there were enough women. It was quite a thought process we had to go through. We wanted to make sure that we had a good representation of digital members of parliament. And the way to do that, we thought, was through merit of their answers one.
One of the participants actually, this is mind-blowing even for us, reading their responses, and they are all telling real lifetime stories. For example, an applicant actually sent in her response, and she mentioned about how she can't study at home. Online learning is not working for her because of domestic violence is happening. It's a young woman telling us that this is happening, and this is what she wants to talk about in the parliament. And if you don't want to talk about that in Parliament Digital, I don't know where else you can talk about it.
I think that's also interesting because it shows that young people are willing to talk about problems that they're facing and seek out solutions. Mm-hmm. We are now seeing a sort of like an intensity to want to change things. They're looking for a space where they can express themselves. We felt like Parliament Digital is a perfect place for people to sort of take that platform and make it their own. We really, really hope that the young people that take part in this, don't stop talking, because what we've done is just sort of spark that conversation just a bit, but they haven't stopped talking yet, and we're really excited to see what comes out of it.
Looking at the number of registration and then the amount of people asking us whether it's still open, can they just be on the waiting list and all that stuff, we realized that actually, young people actually just want change.
Parliament Digital will be happening on the 4th and 5th of July. It begins at 10 in the morning and ends at 2 p.m. Malaysian time. You can check out our live stream on parliament.digital.com. Make sure you check us out!
This poem that I'm performing is dedicated to all of you, and basically I think it's most of us who may find ourselves in a situation where we are very much conflicted in terms of being who we want and being caught in the sort of place that we are born in. It could be the religion, it could be culture, it could be race, it could be anything, it could even be the body. So whenever you find yourself in that situation, please know that you're not alone, and that you are worthy of love, and that you are loved, and you are love as well. So here it is, the overview effect, and I hope that you will enjoy it. So there is a term used by scientists to describe the sudden shift of consciousness experienced by astronauts upon seeing the Earth from space for the very first time. From this viewpoint, there are no more countries and borders, just the division of land and water. No more are the things that we think matter, like money, sex, politics, religion, and power, because from this viewpoint, everything is clear and quiet except for the sound of breathing. As it dawned upon the astronauts that this tiny blue planet is the only place in the entire universe that they can call home. Scientists call this phenomenon the overview effect. Now, you may never get to see me don a spacesuit, and you may never get to watch me walk on the moon, but meeting you has shifted my entire worldview from the singular to the plural, from me to we, from I to us. Getting to know you has made me more than just a body of flesh and bones. I'm seeing things I never used to notice before, like how I was recently struck by the story that occurred in a cave of Hira, what Muslims now refer to as Nuzul Quran, the night when the Prophet Muhammad received his first revelation. What began as an evening meant for deep meditation came to a sudden end when the Archangel Gabriel appeared out of thin air, only to wrap their massive wings around the poor, unsuspecting 40-year-old man, left him grasping for breath and shivering to his bones as Gabriel proceeded to seal his body into a vessel of prophethood. Read, Gabriel thundered. Read in the name of God who created you from a mere clot, and yet Muhammad could not, for he was illiterate. 3 times the angel tightened their grip, 3 times the angel repeated, until finally sacred verses began spilling out from Muhammad's cracked lips like desert spring, and the rest of the story, as we are told, became history. So I thought I knew it all, inside and out, but since waking up with the very first thought of you, I could not help but wonder aloud, now what if the Prophet was never an illiterate? I mean, it is no mystery that the human race is best known for its propensity to forget. So perhaps he had only forgotten how to read the words long inscribed within until the heat from Gabriel's embrace made the invisible legible again. And if that was the case, what about us? Our first kiss, you're the fire casting light in my cave of existence. Us. Like the first nights when I slept in the warmth of your wings, my love, I could read again. And that is it. Have a lovely day or lovely night or lovely evening. Love and light.
Hello, hi everyone. I hope you really enjoyed the program, the 1-hour program for Malaysia just now. On behalf of my friends, Ivy Josiah and Marina Mahathir and I would like to say thanks to the WOW Foundation for bringing the festival together and to their global funding partner, Bloomberg, and founding partner, MasterCard, for making the foundation's work possible. I'd also like to say to give a huge thanks to all of the artists and speakers who joined us today for the festival. We are all so proud to have a diversity of amazing, talented, courageous, and inspiring women share with the world their ideas and their breakthroughs in both causes and expressions. Women expressing themselves and showing the way on how democracy can be better served when led by the youth, how getting to know ourselves and who we are is a journey of discovery and leads us to embrace our heritage with our own eyes and our own experiences. How women are reaching out and doing all they can to help meet the needs of and also elevate the visibility of communities who are often unseen and unheard, especially in times of crisis. How expressions of music, art, and sports know no boundaries. Women are out there smashing patriarchy and all the walls and ceilings that confine us to what they think we are supposed to be. It's just so amazing to witness not only the possibilities, but how these women are making them happen and turning thoughts and dreams into reality. I'd also like to take a moment to acknowledge our working partner who have supported today's contribution to WOW Global 24 Festival, particularly Lena Tan and all the wonderful crew at 3R Media who put together this amazing program for the world to witness and enjoy. So now I'm delighted to hand you back over to the amazing people at WOW Global 24 for the closing ceremony. Bye.
Hi, my name is Feda. I am from Ireland/Sierra Leone. I'm a producer and a songwriter, and today I'm going to sing my new single, which is called Day in Shock. This is an acoustic version, so check out the single on any streaming platform. This is my small brother, Thomas. He's going to play with me today. His artist name is Advocacy, so check us both out online. Day in shock, hard to stop. Wait for you since Monday messed me up. Why too soon? Usai makes sense with you. 1-0 life, wait till you gain the end. Wait till you gain the end. Wait till you gain the end. Baby, hold me in your arms. Yeah, safety in that smile. What you thinking about when you look at me? Yeah, tall and proud, presence loud. No defia, no man, banky, ask come down. BQ with you, Queenie on your side. Great day, baby, silent bobo, you've been mine. Take me to the end. I deserve your mind. I can see you
I'm just thinking that,
baby, hold me in your arms. Yeah, safety in that smile. What you thinking about when you look at me? Yeah. Fast lane, swerving into space, launching ourselves to the brain. Confusion, my sinking knee, my fun now, my baba taking. Hold me in your arms, yeah, safety in that smile. What you thinking about when you look at me? Yeah.
We just heard more of our wow sounds. First, we had the Singing Potatoes from Sri Lanka. I love their title. And then Feda, the Irish Sierra Leoneans, who were just playing this extraordinary piece that you heard. And all the way through this WOW Global 24 Marathon, we've been peppering it with wow sounds, specially commissioned music from women all over the world, just to say, actually, along with this grimness, along with this determination that we have to summon to make change happen and make it happen fast, we also have to recognize that we need joy in our lives. We need expression of that joy in our lives, and that music and art and that idea of personal creativity, it's as much part of our human rights as anything else that we need to fight for. I'm really pleased to say that some of you, because I know this from the stats, have been with us for nearly 24 hours so far. So, you know, whether you're mad or just as determined as I am to change the world, either way, it's fine. Hooray. But those of you who are just joining us, then we are really determined to make sure that because of the inspiration of this next panel, you go back onto the website and pick up the 23 hours that you missed, which will all be available on recordings, not just the Trans Global channel, which this is, but also all the local channels that have come from all over the world. And currently on the local channel, we have Malaysia and everything that they've brought to our attention with their program. We have the BSL signers who've been with us throughout. And I just want to say a big thank you to Jackie and to Ali and to Rose M. Lennon, who've been with us through this 24 hours. It's Jackie who's signing now. It's Ali who'll be signing for Patrick Stewart. And then we'll be back with Jackie again. And then Ali. So between them, they're passing the baton. But this particular 24 hours for a small charity like us, with tiny resources, having just decided to do this on the hoof in response to COVID, we want to really thank very particularly our festival supporters, our main global founding partner, Bloomberg, Moody's and the Arts Council, and then further thanks to all the WOW Hour partners. But because Bloomberg really have been exceptional in their support of WOW throughout our own history, which is 10 years now, it's really a great delight to be able to go to Patty Harris at this point, the CEO of Bloomberg Philanthropies, with this message to us. Thank you, Patty. It's so great to hear from you.
Hello, everyone. It's great to be with you, albeit virtually, to celebrate the incredible work that women of the world is doing to recognize, support, and empower women. I'm so proud that Bloomberg is a global founding partner and longtime champion of this fantastic organization and important cause. At Bloomberg Philanthropies, our mission is to ensure better, longer lives for the greatest number of people. From creating economic opportunities for women and their families through training programs in Rwanda, to improving access to maternal and reproductive health care in Latin America and Sub-Saharan Africa, a big part of that work is focused on lifting up and investing in women who need our help most. As we know, women often face significant burdens and challenges that men do not, and that's become even clearer as a result of the COVID-19 crisis, which has exposed and increased existing inequities in the world, all the while making those burdens heavier than ever before. Whether it's a mother risking her life working on the front lines in an emergency room, or a young girl whose path to economic and professional success just got even narrower. When women are marginalized, we have to do everything we can to empower and support them so they can overcome the obstacles they face and build a better future for themselves and their families. If we do that, we can create a better and more equitable world for us all. That's exactly what WOW is doing, and we're so glad to join them in that fight. Thank you, and enjoy the rest of the festival.
Thank you, Patty. And thanks, Bloomberg Philanthropies, for all the work that you do across the world. And thank you as well for taking stock at this point and being prepared, as I think some of the big corporates are, to say, actually, anything we still need to learn, we're prepared to do that. And we're prepared to combine our energies with grassroots activists all across the world to work out how we use power in the best way. Because it's going to need that. It's going to need people at all levels of society to call out the problems as they really are, and not any longer, any of us, have camouflage provided by privilege, by positions of security, by positions of power, or being able to say that, you know, it's not really our problem. Everything that we're revealing by this COVID moment, and everything that the Black Lives Matter moment is saying to us, is that it is our problem. It is some of our making. And it is up to us to make that change happen. And we've got to. One of the most chilling things of this 24 hours is hearing that no matter where you are on this planet, no matter how privileged your society might be, the one thing that is common across the board is domestic abuse. There is no country in the world that doesn't have it hard baked into its cultural attitudes that it is okay somewhere and somehow to harm women in part of a domestic relationship, and to harm the children, the family structures that inevitably go with that. Now, it's depressing to have women speaking out about this over and over again, when it isn't women, although of course men suffer from violence as well, but it is largely women, and they are the ones trying to solve the problem whilst also being on the receiving end of the problem. But I want you to hear this pre-record that I did with Patrick Stewart. He's a patron of Refuge, and he speaks very candidly about being brought up as a child in a violent relationship and the impact that's had on him as a man, and why he wants men to be part of the solution and not just part of the problem. So have a listen to this. It's thought-provoking in the extreme. I find that in the whole area of the conversations around domestic abuse, which obviously in this period of COVID have spiked horrifically all around the world, but in the main, the people who are talking about it, caring about it, concerned about it, tend to be women, very few men. You became a patron of Refuge many years ago, actually, and I'm wondering what made you decide that you were going to do that and commit yourself to this conversation?
Well, Jude, it happened like this. I grew up when my father returned home from the war. For the first 5 years of my life, from 1940 to 45, were bliss. It was my mother and my brother and myself, and we were very happy. Then my father came home, and he had serious problems. And as time went by, those problems turned into violence, never towards my brother and myself, but always directed at our mother. And we became, which no child should have to do, experts at gauging the temperature of conversations that became disagreements, that became arguments, that became violence. And all we could do, because my father was a very powerful man, was I would go down and insert my body between my mother and my father in order to try to protect her. I never talked about this. I was ashamed and embarrassed, and I was from the time that it all began, because we lived in a working class neighborhood where all the houses were very close together. And so anything that happened in anybody's house could be heard around several other households. So, you know, on the morning going to school after there'd been an ugly fight or a row, we would have police come sometimes, ambulances and so forth. I had never talked about it. I was so ashamed and embarrassed by it, way into my adult life. And then for some reason, I don't quite know why, I think my father had died, and my mother was already gone. And so there was no offense to be given there. So in an interview, I simply very briefly mentioned that I had grown up in a violent home. And then I got a contact from Sandra Hawley, who is the director of Refuge, saying telling me about Refuge. I'd heard about it, of course, because I lived in Chiswick for years and years and years. And Refuge began life on Chiswick High Road, where they literally took over a house and made it a safe place for women and their children to go. And you'll remember, Sheila, my first wife, we would take things over there, blankets, clothing, foodstuffs, and so forth, and mostly just leave it on the doorstep, because getting into the house was impossible. You'd ring the bell and then you'd hear bolts being moved and chains and locks being unlocked. And I was so impressed by what Refuge was doing there. Well, it's now a very different organization, as you know, and instead of just having one building, they have many all over the UK, and they're doing extraordinary work. But there has never been a more intense time of women and families needing help than there is today. You're right, the coronavirus and the lockdown situation. I know because my own wife, Sunny, who I think you might have met, we have found, because we're here in the same house, the same rooms, day after day after day after day, tensions are created, you know, and you try to make everything as comfortable and as manageable as possible. But in homes where there are real problems, then of either mental illness or problems about food or income, those cases have soared. So Refuge is under enormous pressure. And whenever Sandra needs any sort of public help or a public voice, I'm not just happy, but I'm immensely proud to be able to speak on their behalf, because the work they do is extraordinary. That's how I came to be involved.
And I think that you're still rare in the sense of a man saying this is something I can own both in my past and in my present commitment. And of course, you've talked about the shame, the taboo, the sense of kind of inadequacy and humiliation that those sort of experiences put on children, and not being able to help, not being able to solve something, not being able to tell anybody. All of this is a terrible cruelty for children. Why do you think that men and boys who are just as likely to have that family experience, even though they might not be as likely to be survivors, they'll still be part of the survival group? Why do you think men and boys don't come out and talk about family violence in the way that women do?
I think, as I've described what happened to me, it is a sense of shame that one's a sense of shame. And also, I must be absolutely frank, a sense of responsibility. When I was a child, I would often blame myself for what was happening at nighttime downstairs while I had been put to bed, as though somehow it was because of me that these things were happening. And in addition, Jude, I know that I have within my own nature what was in my father. I have over the years been able to interpret the feelings that I get, the feelings of anger, the feelings of rage, the feeling of wanting to hurt something or someone. All of those are feelings that I have had. When I first started acting, the one great piece of fakery that I always practiced as an actor was rage. I could never allow myself on stage, mostly, but occasionally in front of the camera, authentically express uncontrollable rage, because I was terrified what would happen if I let it out. So I kept it shut down. But it's there still, Jude. I have it. And you know, Sunny, my wife, she knows about it. She is aware of it. And we talk about it a great deal. I have never been violent. and harmful to any woman in my life, but the urge sometimes has been there. And it's because of that ongoing understanding of my own nature that I am so grateful to be able to do this work for Refuge, because it acts as a kind of balance in my life. So those men and boys you talk about, I wouldn't be surprised at all if those feelings are not also in them. And they can sometimes be very close to the surface. And it is a frightening and shameful and humiliating experience.
We still have an enormous problem, don't we, right around the world, in accepting that the masculine idea has been a trap in the same way as the feminine idea has been a trap. You know, the strong man, the man who doesn't cry, the man who doesn't get sand kicked in his face, you know, the man whose physicality is, you know, the thing that he strives out with. All of these things are tremendous pressures on boys and then on men. And the thing that, you know, obviously women need and deserve safety. They need and deserve a life that can be independent, where they forge their own future for themselves without in any way it being coerced by a partner. But men obviously need help, they need tools, they need ways of managing this hostility, and also, I suppose, railing against some of the ideas that boys are given, that it's kind of okay to be silent and hostile, that's part of being macho. Do you see many programs in place that are helping boys and men navigate these feelings, some of which are terrifying, that you yourself have had help with?
I don't, Jude, no. I have talked about this with Sandra Hawley, because I know that there are so many men everywhere in the world who do need help with this. Now, some men might privately and exclusively turn to a therapist or seek counseling or even you know, practical assistance in dealing with these feelings that they have. Most, I don't think, do. And one of the reasons I've always been grateful to have been an actor is that it is a part of my job to explore carefully all of these feelings which are my own. And then, of course, sometimes I do it in terms of a character. And so the self-analysis process is very, very important, and in the work that I do. And yet I don't think many men, and I'm sure not young men or boys, have access to either the provocation that makes them want to examine what is going on in their heads, in their lives, in their relationships. But I wish there were much more attention being paid to this. And I have discussed this with Sandra. And from time to time, it's rare, very rare, but from time to time, there are men who seek for help from Refuge too, who are themselves the victim in a violent household. But it is extraordinarily rare.
Yeah, I think that boys and men grow up in all societies with a huge amount of fear about violence and a huge amount of having to displace that fear into other ways of, you know, protecting themselves or holding things at bay. And I think we give very little help to boys and men in the way that you've suggested. And I think also the thing about domestic abuse, even the framing of the word, sounds like, you know, it all happens inside a house. It's the personal responsibility of this dysfunctional couple or family, and they've got to sort of solve it all by themselves. Whereas actually, like other things that we've had to look at in society, it's something that belongs to all of us. It's part of our accepted culture. We're now changing that accepted culture, but it's not changing fast enough. And we find it difficult to own our problems together. But, you know, there's a lot more discussion about it than when I was growing up. There's a lot more owning of it now. Do you think that governments are beginning to feel that it has to be part of health education, mental health education, positive relationship education? Can you see optimism, I suppose, in the way that governments are attending to it?
I have to confess that I'm not aware of that, Jude. In my conversations with Sandra Hawley, I have heard about some of the actions that they are taken. I am not aware at all that governments anywhere are taking responsibility to see that young men, boys, male children are being given help in this respect. Here's something else, which actually I've never talked about, but I was a bully when I was a schoolboy. There was a small band of us who bullied other boys. I went to a co-educational junior school, and actually I can't recall having any relationship with any of the girls in my school at all. But I did bad things when I was 7, 8, 9, 10. I think I began to get a hold on it when I was 11. There was one boy in my class who had a deformed hand. It was just a small lump of flesh with little stubs coming out of it. I don't know why he had that deformity. And we would gather around him and we would punch him and hit him until we made him hit his hand against the stone wall, this deformed hand, until it bled. And then when it bled, we would laugh at him and push him on the floor and run away. I was one of the people who was doing that. But from time to time, I would look over and I would see a master, one of our teachers, who would be aware of what was happening, but never did anything to stop it. So in some sense, there was a silent approval of the kind of bullying that was going on as a boy. And that's where it starts, in children that young. I mean, I was hearing on the radio just now, listening, I'm talking to you from Los Angeles, but I always listen to the 5 o'clock news on BBC Radio 4. And the boys the two boys who pushed that boy off the balcony at Tate Modern are being sentenced, I think, today. And, what I did as a boy is not so far removed from what they did. The impact was far, far worse, far greater. But I don't see at the moment any specific objectives that are to help young men. I mean, I think from the age of being young teenagers right up into the late teens and the 20s, when men are beginning to have relationships, mature adult relationships with female partners, that they are in any way being given organized national help to combat their worser instincts.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. No, I think you're right, and some of the images of leadership we know are incredibly unhelpful, because that we're still having leaders at national level in some countries who openly kind of strut the idea that macho-ness and its
I am presently living in a country that has a president who is a bully. Mm-hmm. We've seen that time and time again in the last 4 years, since 2016. And he is setting an example, Jude. And it's one of the reasons why in the protests that have been happening here as well as in Europe, but on a massive scale here in the United States, in city after city, we have seen bullying as one aspect of those protest marches, only from a minority of young men, but it's evident. You can see it on videos every night.
Yeah. My hope, because, you know, I'm a sort of person who likes to think, well, what can we do and how can we make things better, is that although the COVID has revealed these dreadful inequities and intensified inequities, like, you know, relationships where the power base is so inappropriate that a partner can feel they can damage another partner both mentally and physically, and that they can own them. My hope is that something about the COVID revelations will mean that collectively we'll say, okay, some things have got to change. Whether they change enough, who knows? But I feel that, you know, you and I are having a conversation. We have had this conversation privately between director and actor, you know, years ago, because, as you say, you know, as an actor, you have to bring the truth of your experience into the circumstances that you're working in, and that's a very powerful intimacy that the acting profession have with each other, artists have with each other. But I'm feeling as if at least the taboo around domestic abuse has been lifted to a certain extent. You know, people are saying I'm a survivor. People are saying I was a perpetrator. People are saying I was a casualty. I was in the family grouping that was a casualty. And it's always got to be about speaking out, hasn't it? It's always got to be about breaking that moment of silence, like you did. And that allows for a huge new set of thoughts to flood into the mind and the heart.
The impact on society is enormous. And the revelations that have come out of some of the research that has been done, that the ones who are at greatest risk, where the numbers are highest, when put in the framework of the population, are African American, people of color, and the yes, I hope it is encouraging an open candor about oneself and one's society. But at the same time, it has been producing these violent reactions in some of these protest marches, and from you know, white supremacist organizations. I had no idea there were so many of them in the United States, but and at least there is now a certain amount of exposure. And when the United States has a president and a government which will take these issues seriously and do everything they can to address them along the lines that you have been describing, then we will find that there might become benefits, in fact, from what COVID has done to us.
Yeah, we long for those times. Patrick, perhaps not now, but another time, I'd love to talk to you more extensively about the Othello we did together. That's maybe another whole subject, but just as we finish this interview, I mean, you had this brilliant idea, gosh, how long is it now, 20 years ago that we did it together?
Yeah, it's over 20 years.
Of an all African-American Othello, where Othello was himself a white man. And that by reversing, by doing this also photo negative, one could explore the idea of race in Washington, which at that time and still was a hugely divided community. And, you know, when we worked on that together, we had about 24 African-American actors. And I think you were, you and one other were the only white actors. And we had intense and wonderful conversations, as I recall, with these African-American actors who were raging about the fact that, you know, they had so few opportunities to do Shakespeare, they had so few opportunities to be cast in roles that weren't like drug addicts or dealers or whatever. And the audience in Washington at the time for that show had to be sort of rearranged, otherwise they would have all been white, just kind of coming into the theatre as the kind of owners of that theatre. And I'm aware that 20 years later, things have changed a bit, but certainly not enough, not as fast as I would have thought when we did what I think was quite, you know, pioneering work, where we said, you know, we are the minority in this context. Tell us how to make this play.
That certainly was a very potent aspect of our production. And it's very interesting that you should have brought that up, because in these past few days, I have been again in contact with Patrice Johnson, who, as you remember, was our wonderful Desdemona. Patrice and I, we email backwards and forwards and have done for years. But the other day she sent me a photograph that Tegel F. Bougere had sent her of she and I face to face, smiling lovingly at one another. And Michelle Hurd, who is a Black actress here in Los Angeles and is working with me in the new series that I'm shooting, she asked what it was. And I said, well, this was a production, well, I think it was 1998 we did it, with a woman director, which itself was revolutionary, because I remember doing some research and finding I couldn't find productions of Othello that had been directed by a woman. So you were breaking ground there. And then the racial transpositions, you know, it became known as the photo-negative Othello. And Michelle Hurd said, I never heard about that production. That's extraordinary. You were doing that work in 1998. Who knows? I didn't know. And it was clearly extraordinary for her. And it made me feel so proud and proud of both of us that we had brought that about. But, you know, looking back now, I believe it was extraordinary what we did. But at the time, it seemed normal and perhaps even a little bit necessary. Well, in order for me to play Othello, we had to make all of these huge adjustments, because it was not just about Black prejudice, but about prejudice in any form. And I have the most wonderful memories of that experience.
Yeah, me too.
He the man. You remember that cry that used to go up at the curtain calls?
Absolutely. And I always remember that at least 9 of the actors had played Othello. And so you had about 10 directors. You had me and all the other 9 who played Othello, and they were just as good. Not you, but just as good a director. So, Patrick, thanks so much for your time this afternoon, and or this morning, isn't it, Los Angeles? And well, we'll meet again when times allow.
I hope very soon, Jude. Thank you so much for asking me to do this. I'm really delighted and proud to have been part of your 24-hour wow.
Thank you, Patrick.
Take care, darling. Be safe.
And you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
So that was me talking to Sir Patrick Stewart, mainly about his experience of domestic abuse and how that impacted on his own behaviour as a boy and then as a man. We have the good fortune, the great good fortune now, to be joined by Julia Gillard. She was the 27th Prime Minister of Australia. She was the first woman to serve as Australia's Prime Minister, and she's also the inaugural chair of the Global Institute for Women's Leadership at King's College London. She's a great advocate for all areas of girls' and women's rights. And of course, she's also a fantastic historian now, based on her own personal experience of living through history. Julia, welcome. It's great to have you here.
Thanks, Jude. Great to be with you.
Julia, I really want to ask you to consider the last 24 hours, not that we've made you watch all of it, but in terms of the themes that we addressed, the themes of justice, the themes of education, the themes of health, of violence, of climate change, and of course of money, all of which in this COVID disaster and this moment of revolutionary language and action have demonstrated that the concerns of women are fully intersectional, and that really, you know, this level of injustice is global and not partial. It seems a time when we have to call on women's leadership in a completely different way, that we have to bring women's leadership to the fore and ask different things of it. I wonder whether you'd talk a little bit about that, about what you've seen in COVID, about what women's reactions have been, and where you think women's leadership now has to play a role?
Jude, this is clearly a time of crisis, but also a time of possibility. I've been really heartened to see the world value women's leadership at this time. And we've all seen the pieces in newspapers and magazines that have talked about women leaders, whether it be Jacinda Ardern or whether it be Erna Solberg in Norway, other women leaders around the world, and how they particularly have led with caring and empathy during this crisis. And by contrast, what we've seen is a singular failure of the strong man sort of image of leadership. The men who normally govern with bluster have been the ones who have let the virus do the worst of work in their countries, because that style of leadership simply hasn't kept people safe. So I'm hoping that out of this we can evaluate again what leadership traits we are looking for, and we can have a very honest discussion about what it means to build back better after this crisis. We went into it with inequality, with hyperpartisanship, with nationalism, with the outworking still of the global financial crisis, the crisis of 2008, with, you know, all sorts of inequalities that meant when the virus came, whilst we, you know, said to each other, we're all in this together, in reality, people were in incredibly different positions to face this virus. So I hope that we can, through WOW and more generally, be mobilising a conversation about what it will mean to build back better, not just so that we will be more resilient in the face of a future pandemic, but so that we address the underlying inequalities and exclusions that this pandemic has laid so bare.
We've often talked about we need more women leaders, and we've put that idea into government, into local authority, into the tops of corporates, etc. And generally speaking, people have sort of nodded and made a little bit of room. But I'm wondering whether, when you talk about we need women's leadership, whether it's not just a demand from beneath, but whether it needs to be a responsibility now, not just to ask women to be there, but to say we insist on being there because we have the evidence that actually at this point in time, for whatever reason in the progress of humanity, these are the skills that we now need. We need this experience, and it needs to be women taking over. Now, we've never asked it in that wholesale way before, but would you be prepared to say that's what we need to do?
Well, I certainly don't think we should keep falling for what I refer to as the politics of scarcity. You know, we've been trained over recent years, I think, to say, well, women are coming through. They're coming through for 2 or 3 seats around the table. You know, they're going to be a third of the cabinets that run nations, or maybe they're going to be 20% of corporate boards. And what we then find, of course, is it creates this false competition between women, where women end up striving against each other to get one of those rare spots, instead of us standing back and saying, we're not going to play this game anymore. This isn't about an end point where women are 20 or 30%. This is about an end point where merit and the best of voices truly come through. And if you believe, as I do, that excellence is equally distributed throughout humanity, then that must mean that we should see diverse leadership teams, diverse in every way, including in gender. And so I think we've got to be more assertive about less of the tokenism, the toucanism, the 1 or 2 women who get to sit around the table, and more ambitious about what wholesale change would look like.
Mm-hmm. If women had been in seats of power, I mean, had really had their hands on the levers of power to do with money and the economy, when this moment came of crisis and this huge input, nothing in my lifetime has ever been this moment of fiscal input into economies all over the world to stem the hemorrhaging. And yet we had today the evidence that that fiscal input hasn't been set through a gender lens at all. Now, if women had been in charge of those economic choices, would that have been different? Would we have been able to make sure that all of the debris that we're seeing around women's security, around women's health, around the violence issues, around women's economic jeopardy at this point, that might have been very different, might it not, if women's experience had been part of that leadership and fiscal distribution?
Well, we do know from the evidence that when women are around decision-making tables as equal partners, not just as a token voice, but actually included, we do know that women tend to bring policies that extend peace and security. For example, the evidence shows that when societies have been war-torn, if women are partners in bringing about the peace, then the peace will last longer than if women are excluded. We know that women have brought to the fore issues in decision-making that have been historically neglected, about reproductive health and choices, about childcare, about the undervaluing of women's work. So I do think, that the evidence is very clear that including a diversity of opinion gives you a better outcome. But Jude, I am very conscious that as we go through this pandemic era, we will move from the intensity of the health crisis to even more addressing the economic crisis, the rebuilding. And one thing I think we've got to guard against is an analysis and a set of behaviours which says, well, women's leadership's been fine when we were dealing with the health crisis because women are empathetic and nurturing and caring and they're good at that kind of stuff. But now we're really dealing with the economic crisis that is historically more been the preserve of men. We're the ones who do the money things and the big infrastructure things. And at that point, there is more of a squeeze as to who gets to make the decisions. I think we've got to be very forewarned and forearmed about that risk, that in 12 months' time and in 2 years' time, we won't be having the same dialogue about the need for women's leadership in the economic rebuilding unless we force it.
Yeah, and tell me, how are we going to force it, Julia?
Well, I think, one, we've got to keep talking about it. Unless we shine a light on these things, then they won't come to the fore. And one thing that I'm, really optimistic about in this sense is I don't think that a number of the issues that have been under discussion during this pandemic, the impact of school closures in developing countries on girls' education and girls' life chances, the fact that this is predominantly a women's recession, the jobs that have been lost are predominantly women's jobs, the value of women's leadership, the value of the caring professions, who keeps us going as a society when push comes to shove. Overwhelmingly it's women who have been in the front line of caring for others as the pandemic has hit. I think we wouldn't have had that, those issues at the forefront of the dialogue if we hadn't had women campaigning for so many years in the lead up to this pandemic. And I think that should give us an optimistic flavour that if we do keep campaigning, we do keep talking, we do keep pushing, then we can make change.
Mm-hmm. What I've noticed is that the loneliness that female leaders have had to endure over many years. I mean, watching you give that extraordinary misogyny speech all those years ago in Australian Parliament, the loneliness of women leadership seems to me to be less likely now as women stop internalising the idea that they don't want to belong to the women's group because it's better to be on the men's group because it has more power. And I think that women are beginning to say we need to be sisters. We need to stand together. We need to stand together across the divides that have been made for us. And do you think that's true? Do you think that powerful women who were previously told that, they may not want to be with the girls because that wasn't such a great place, do you think powerful women are now being asked to say, you've got to stand up for the rights that were won for you by making sure that you're getting rights for the next generation of girls? Is the language of female leadership one of greater solidarity than it used to be?
I think the answer to that is definitely yes. And I have a book coming out, which I wrote with an African friend of mine, Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala, whom, amongst many other things, is the chair of the Global Vaccine Alliance. So you couldn't have a more important position during a pandemic than that. And we have, in putting the book together, interviewed 8 women leaders, you know, conservative women, progressive women, you know, Theresa May from the United Kingdom, Hillary Clinton, Michelle Bachelet from Chile, Ellen Johnson Sirleaf, Joyce Banda, and the list goes on, Jacinta Ardern, Erna Solberg, you know, women from across the world and across the political spectrum. And they all participated in those interviews and discussions because they clearly felt this sort of solidarity, and they wanted to be in a discussion that was bringing women's leadership to the forefront, and they wanted to be in a discussion where they could share what they had learned with the generations who are coming up now. And, you know, there's a difference between chronological generations and political generations. So not just with young women, but with a woman of any age who is still on a journey into decision making, into leadership. They wanted to share their insights. And so I've left that gathering of their interviews and their words of wisdom very optimistic about the way in which women want to band together, to be seen to band together, to be unafraid to do that, to be less concerned than women were in the past about, you know, just being seen to bang on about women's issues. I think a lot of that kind of negative stereotyping we've left behind us. And so that does seem to me to mean that we're all getting more open, more assertive, more collective about this endeavour around women and leadership and how big the changes we want to see are and how we're going to push for them.
Mm-hmm. The new book, by the way, folks, which comes out on the 12th of July in Australia and New Zealand, and then in the autumn in the UK and a little bit later in the US, is called Women in Leadership, Real Lives, Real Lessons. It's going to be great to hear that because, as you say, when women start stopping themselves being so cautious, getting away from the idea that women have to be nice and reasonable all the time, calling stuff out as it really is, demanding change quickly rather than slowly, not being grateful for having the right to your rights, you know, this will change and accelerate. From Zilly from the UN yesterday talked about radical impatience and saying that, you know, it is completely unreasonable not to have radical impatience now. The scale of change that's needed versus the slowness of the progress, it just isn't acceptable. And I'm wondering, finally, for this moment, Julia, before I turn to 2 of my other guests, I'm going to come back to you at the end, but just to think about the impact that Black Lives Matter has had on all of us. You know, for myself as a cisgendered white woman from the UK, growing up at a time when I wasn't given any information that would help me understand the complexity of our history, and therefore, no matter how well-intentioned and good you think you are, you will have hard-baked inside you attitudes that your country and your culture has given you. Unlearning stuff as fast as you possibly can in order to make a just world that you want to belong to. This is something which we have to accelerate, isn't it? And what do you observe in Australia and across the world has happened as a result of this new moment of the Black Lives Matter movement?
Well, there was a set of gatherings here in Australia too around Black Lives Matter, as this has swept the world, the US and then in other nations. For us, it's been about facing again the issue of how our justice system treats and discriminates against Indigenous Australians who are incarcerated at truly shocking rates, and many have died in custody. And there have been inquiries and commissions over years and years and years, but, you know, clearly not enough has changed because we still have Indigenous Australians who, for non-payment of fines and things like that end up in prison cells, and some of them don't survive the experience. So for us in Australia, this is about, a reckoning with our own history, and it's a connected history to the UK, but a different history. A woman of my age in school was largely taught that Australian history started when Captain Cook arrived. Now, of course, kids are taught about the thousands and thousands of years of Indigenous history in Australia, our First Peoples, and their special connection to land, and what a privilege it is to live in a nation that has the oldest continuing culture on earth. But there is still so much more to do if we are to address the weight of history and everything that has brought to modern Australia in terms of discrimination and exclusion.
So this Black Lives Matter moment is accelerating change that has to happen all around the world in many different cultures. I was just speaking to Senator Sherry Rahman in Pakistan, and she was saying it's allowed people to call out colorism in Pakistan. It's allowed people to ban products overnight for skin whitening. So it's having a profound effect in terms of the language of change. And I suppose finally, that is one of the most exciting things, isn't it? That you're often taught that coming out in the streets, making a protest, being disturbing, being demanding, that this is somehow, not useful, and one should just pipe down and let the democratic processes go forward. But there are times when citizens have got to raise their voice. And she was saying that they are beginning to look at their whole police system and saying that they can't accept any longer the way policing is done, and they'll have to dismantle the police, or at least inquire as to whether that's happening, whether that's possible to happen. Do you think institutional change of that radical nature can be expected now from our societies?
I certainly think that this is a moment that is pregnant with possibility, because so many people around the world have rallied so intensively to this cause. But I am still very anxious, Jude, about the forces of reaction and backlash. And I know here in Australia, and, from looking at the situation around the world, that we have seen endeavours to try and get change in the past that clearly haven't worked. Otherwise, we wouldn't be in this moment. If those past endeavours had worked, we wouldn't be here. So I'm partially energised and enthused about the wave of energy that's in the demands now, but I'm also very thoughtful about how much it's going to take to bring the kind of change that people are asking for. So I don't think we can take anything for granted. I think it would be wrong for us to say so many people have mobilised, change will come. There's a big gap between the mobilisation and securing the change, and we've got to keep working to fill that gap.
Okay, thank you. Julia, I'll come back to you, but thank you for now. I'm going to now go to Nimco Ali, OBE, somebody who's been part of the WOW movement since we started it 10 years ago. Welcome, Nimco. She's a Somalian British social activist and writer. She co-founded Daughters of Eve and was named by the Sunday Times as one of Debrett's 500 most influential people in Britain. She's also the founder of the Five Foundation and has been central in positioning FGM as a key issue in ending violence against women. So, Nimco, really pleased to have you as always, and really pleased that you're able to make the time when I know that this particular period for your work has been so intense. You'll have to do so much labour to educate everybody about what we need to know, and also fight for policy change, financial change and care change to bring about the things that you believe in and have to be done. You said to me before we came on air that there was a kind of a huge issue that COVID not had just revealed, but was intensifying in terms of girls and women's safety. I wonder what you feel that COVID has done as far as you're concerned across the globe.
Hi Jude, thank you for having me, and thank you for always caring about the most vulnerable girls on the planet and giving them a platform on WOW. One of the things that COVID has done is that it's really laid bare how unequal and ineffective the kind of the development model is. So one of the key things of why we started the Five Foundation was to actually say that local activism and funding local women who are doing the work was the only way to end issues like FGM. So as soon as COVID hit and a large of the large NGOs and the bilaterals had to pull out, it meant that the issues that they were funding or the issues that they were tackling still happened. So at this moment, as we speak, we have millions of girls with no resources and no protection from things like FGM, domestic violence, child marriage, and also rape. So even in the most successful country, which has been doing some great work on FGM, Kenya, which was honestly on target to end FGM by 2025, has now gone backwards. In certain communities in the West Pokot area, in the last 2.5 weeks, over 500 girls have been subjected to FGM. In other parts of Kenya, 4,000 teenage girls have been impregnated. And when I say impregnated, that's either through incestuous rape, either through child marriage, or just the fact that these girls are out of school, so they're being taken advantage of. So what COVID has done is really show that the way that we are trying to make the world better from a Western perspective is not working. And a lot of the work that has been happening has been very racist and sexist. And I think for me, I've spent the last almost 18 months trying to get the development sector to understand that they needed to invest and trust women. A lot of those weren't interested. And what's been fascinating is that in the last 4 or 5 months, it's been the private sector that has actually come in and tried to support the most vulnerable women.
Yeah, I go a little bit deeper into this, because I think this kind of idea that the NGO world was there to sort of save and support vulnerable people, it carries, it's laced, isn't it, with exactly the same issues of, you know, the people who have power telling the people who have no power how they are going to receive help. And as you've said, when those agencies have left, it is still women mainly on the ground doing the stuff, and yet they're not the ones that are given the money, they're not the ones that are given the power, the seat at the table. So what do we do about that, Nimco? Tell us what to do.
It's actually funding women, so it's very simple. The roots of FGM and a lot of the inequalities in Africa is about economic injustice. At the moment, women in Africa are not seen as the human capital of a country. So we talk about this idea of ending poverty, but you can't end poverty if 51% of your population is either uneducated, has been forcibly subjected to FGM, or has been married off as children. So FGM at a community level adds value to girls by meaning that you can sell them as primitively as for 2 extra cows. But on a central government level, it's costing governments and it's costing countries billions of dollars on an annual basis, because of the fact that there's like early death, complications from the health of FGM, psychological issues. So for me, it's like, if you give women the ability to be able to make money and make choices, which has happened to us in the West. There's the reason why women in the West have the rights that they do today is because we were allowed to work, we were allowed to open bank accounts, and our grandmothers fought for that. If we give African women the ability to be able to work and to be able to bank their dollar, then they can choose when they get married, who they get married to, and how many kids they have. I am really irritated and tired of having to tell Western white women that the only thing that African women need is to have their awareness raised of FGM. We have experienced FGM, so we know it's bad. And also this concept of the first thing that we need as African women is the ability to have access to contraception. We can have access to contraception if we have access to documentation. That means we can democratically vote for people that can give us that. The idea that we're spending $800 million on UN agencies that just talk about contraception and nothing about empowering and giving documentation to women is quite problematic. But for me, I'm thinking that if the UK has made this announcement that it's going to roll DFID, which is the Department for International Development, into the FCO and the Foreign and Commonwealth Office. And I'm thinking, well, this is a real opportunity that if one of the global economic powers can really start, pushing a feminist forum, there is nothing wrong. I also want to say that there is nothing wrong with the US and the UK and other countries that have given women certain rights to go to African countries and say that we believe in democracy, women's rights and human rights, and actually really tie that with development. At the moment, what we're doing is that we're giving people millions of dollars, but then at the same time not saying anything politically and diplomatically about 70% of their girls being out of education, 70% of their girls being forcibly married off into what is institutional rape and subjected to FGM. So I think in this this COVID era, if we are going to build back better, one of the things that I really, really hope that we get rid of is the aid model, because you can Google every single day the TED Talks by Africans who are leading in their industries and in their countries, and none of them ever say that we need more aid. They say we need more democracy in the way that we have conversations with global leaders and the way that we're invested in. And for me, as an African in the diaspora, I really just want to be able to say that is, let's not feel uncomfortable about actually really talking about supporting Africa to develop as a trading continent as opposed to an aid-dependent continent.
Mm-hmm. Economic empowerment, democracy, the right to make people's decisions on their own terms, with their own knowledge. I mean, that is a key part of equality. Nimco, the final thing I wanted to ask is this. The Build Back Better idea, it needs to be replaced, doesn't it? You said build back differently, build back completely differently. Do you think that the ideas are in place imaginatively in places of power, where the real power are already starting building recovery plans? Do you see that women's voices and radical change models are circling around those environments at the moment? And if they're not, what do we do about it?
Unfortunately, they're not. There are big conversations that are being had about the environment, about the economy, about all these things, and they're all very gender blind. And even the massive philanthropies will have data on poverty and all these things, but really forget about women being at the heart of it. I think what we really need to do is to deconstruct the way that we want to be able to build this. So the men that are holding the tools need to put them down and actually just listen for a moment. And I think that's what we have to do. We have to get global leaders to listen and really start to platform women and communities that are the ones that are going to be able to sustain a better world for us. So it's not about building better, it's building differently for a better world.
Thank you. Now, I'm going to say something very key here for the WOW charity. As a small charity, we're doing all of this over these 24 hours with help from our global partners that are going to thank shortly. But we are doing it for free in order that girls and women can have access to these conversations, provided they have digital tools, which many, many don't. But if they do, we want them to have no financial barrier. And we're planning in the autumn, as part of the Day of the Girl, to do a similar event, a global Day of the Girl. If you'd like to support that, please press the donate button or sign up to our website newsletter. Let us know that you'd like to be part of this conversation, because girls need their rights as much as women need their rights, and they need to know that their voices are cared for. Nimco, thank you very much indeed. I'm going to turn now to our final speaker, Olga Miller. Olga, you are somebody who has worked in the financial services for a long time. You're a global innovation expert. You're specialising in women and finance, sustainability and gender smart investment. You're a former managing director at UBS Wealth Management, and you've co-founded Smart Purse, which is a financial toolkit for women. We need different ways of having conversations with girls and women, I believe, don't we? About financial inclusion, about financial confidence, about financial rights. Can you tell me what you think is happening across the kind of fintech landscape at the moment, and how much are we taking into account the needs of girls and women's independence financially at this point in time?
So thank you, Jude. I think there are two things that are happening at this point in time. One is there are a lot of disruptive solutions being developed as part of, I would say, the grassroots fintech, right? My own or this startup is one example of it, and there are many, many others. And on the other hand, there is this massive financial services institutions which acknowledge that something has to change, but the change is incredibly slow, most likely too slow. And then I think there is a third component to all of it, and I think it was Julia who said it before, where a lot of the government development packages, helpful packages, have not really been designed with a gender lens. I would argue that many of them have not even been designed with women and girls and what, for instance, women entrepreneurs would need in mind. And I guess this is for me probably the biggest root of the challenge. We need more women at the decision-making roles when financial services solutions are being designed, rather than trying to plug them into the system later on and say, oh, we also need to do something for the women. So I would love to see far more women in decision-making roles in financial services institutions, the chief investment officers, the heads of product, the heads of customer experience, rather than relying on a very agile and brilliant fintech community that will, however, always drive systemic change from the sideline.
Mm-hmm. But when people think about fintech, it always feels at the moment as if it's propping up and serving the idea of economic growth that is making some people really very well off, if not extremely rich, and doesn't take into account the fact that a huge part of the population of any part of the world are actually living in poverty, need different kinds of instruments. So how do we close the gap to stop the financial services always looking as if they're really serving the people who know how to make money and want to make more of it for themselves?
I think sound financial education and impartial solutions are probably two of the answers. The third one is to design and develop really accessible, and I mean by accessible, I mean really easy financial services products that actually are designed around the people that they are meant to serve, right? I don't see any other way, and these solutions have to be designed by a mixed team and with the people in mind that they are meant to serve, not coming top down saying, oh, here is a fabulous tool, now you are due to use that for your budgeting. But it all starts also with educating the people that are meant to use these tools, what their rights are, how easy it actually is to be good with money, and on some of the basic aspects of finance. To give you one example now just from Britain, out of the 10 things that British people wish they had learned at school, 5 relate to money, and number 1 was to have sound budgeting skills.
Mm-hmm. And because we have a history of women not being allowed to own money, not being able to allowed to use money, not even be able to have their own bank accounts, their own checkbooks, the idea that women actually are property, it's really psychologically quite difficult for some of us to realize that we are actually entitled to be paid properly, to not be undervalued, to not to do free labor, but actually to think of ourselves as part of the economic rights and the economic growth of a nation that will be adjusted to take account of how we want to live our own lives.
Well, absolutely. I think it is an enormously pivotal point. I mean, the female purse, with women holding roughly 40% of the global private wealth in their hand and influencing 80% of the purchasing decisions, we have to make that purse matter and not ask for permission. Yet staggeringly, you see on the stats that 6 out of 10 women actually delegate financial responsibility to their partners voluntarily because they feel that they don't know enough. And that comes back to this point of inclusive financial education. But I think it also comes to a point of, while we are waiting for the financial services industry to change or for governments to design a solution that also has women and girls in mind, I think we have to step forward and develop our own support system, women supporting other women, women supplying philanthropic capital that, for instance, as Nimco mentioned, right, is not just development aid, but is actually providing actual solutions. I think there is also a lot of power in ourselves, not to end up as victims, but end up as change makers of this crisis beyond having led through the viruses over to actually how economy is being shaped in the future.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Olga. This idea of financial education and girls and women having the right and access to it, that's an important part of building back differently, not just better. Julia, let me come to you for a final word before I do all the thank yous for this extraordinary 24-hour experience. Let's just talk about building back better. What do you want to send us away with? If you were going to give us a message, you said, okay, you've already said, be hopeful, but don't be complacent. Be ready and on the alert for the fact that we could row back very quickly from this moment of drama and people could cover up the traces very quickly. What do we need to do to make sure that we take advantage of the crisis in the best way?
I'm going to pinch a line from Olga. She just said that there is power in us, that there is power in women, and I absolutely believe that. I think, firstly, feel that power. Second, it's fine to be angry about how slow the rate of change is. Feel that anger, feel that impatience for change. Third, as we look to build a better world post this crisis, seize the moment. I know that many of us have gone into this feeling like we've spent many years in activism. Perhaps some of us even feel like we've spent many years banging heads against brick walls. But I do think that it is possible to make change. And when the world has been through such a huge event, that does give us opportunities. So let's not miss this moment. None of us is going to have all of the solutions in our heads or in our hands. They're only going to be found collectively, which is why staying in contact, staying in touch, hearing women's voices, listening to each other, bringing us together 24 hours across the world is just so important to this process and this era of change. So let's keep doing this. Learn from it, take it away, be active with it, then come back together again and get the next dose of what we need to learn and next dose of energy and go and do it again.
Thank you. And Nimco, as a black woman leader, tell us what you think the next step should be.
I think the next step should be really listening and getting this, myth out of our minds that without any funding, that black women are just going to be able to carry on and keep doing things. And when I say black women, I mean specifically African women. They have kept the continent going for the last 60 years without any funding, without any support. And I think if we are going to build back better, we have to start funding them and start believing in the power of African women. So I really want to say specifically, let's really harness the power of African women.
Thank you. I want to spend a couple of minutes now thanking the wonderful teams that have helped us do this 24-hour marathon. Obviously, thank you to all our speakers, our hosts, our panelists, the WOW Sounds and the WOW Big Ideas contributions over the 24 hours. Thank you to the WOW Foundation's global 24-hour team. You might be surprised by how small it is. Sabina Akhtar, Lou Brody, Casherelle Brown, Catherine Fenton, Alice Gordon, Daniela Jenkins, Charlie Marshall, Cordelia Millwood, Domino Pateman, Kate Pakenham, Shireen Pereira, Laura Schofield, Pia Zicci, and all their partners, families, friends and housemates who've helped and kept us awake all weekend, and especially Andrew. And then our technical team at the Vanuatu e-conferencing, Devon Martin, Jennifer Dunn, Hardeep Tour, Vikesh Doshi and their teams, the TEA Films, the performance interpreters, the BSL interpreters, Stage Techs and My Clear Techs, all the global channel partners, Care International, Connected Women Leaders, Disasters Emergency Fund, Reach All Women in War, Their World, UN Women, With and For Girls, Janet's List, The Female Lead, all the local channel partners across Red Lines in the Middle East, Ake Arts and Book Festival on the African continent, the British Council, South Asia and Turkey, Jagriti Women's Centre of Excellence in India, Redes de Mare in Brazil, WOW Australia, Of One Mind in Australia and the Pacific, WOW Bradford UK, WOW Malaysia, WOW USA. Thanks to all the global 24-hour festival supporters, Arts Council, Bloomberg, Moody's, and the 24-hour partners who helped us enormously. Shout out for you guys. And the WOW Foundation supporters year-round. Bloomberg, always Bloomberg. They've been with us from the beginning. We'll never forget them and always love them. MasterCard, who've just joined us, Esme Fairbairn Foundation, and all our individual patrons and foundation builders. Thanks to everybody who's donated over this weekend. And of course, it's not too late. We wanted to make this festival completely free. Every donation means so much. And actually, thank you. Ooh, we're going to cry. Thank you, all the girls and women whose voices haven't been part of this because they're not able to be here. They're silenced. They're made too vulnerable. They're not safe. Thank you to them, because it's their stories that we're learning and that are teaching us why our world is so unjust. And it's their stories that fire us on as we say we cannot carry on having such inequity in our world. We deserve to give girls a different future, whoever they are, wherever they are, whatever our cultural histories have taught us. We have to make it different. There should be no girl child born unable to realise their dreams and their potential. Any woman who've been on this 24 hours, we got here because other people fought for our rights to have a voice. And it's our job to carry on making that fight happen for the next generation. And you wouldn't be listening if you weren't prepared to do that. But should we just do it harder and better? And should we do it all together? I hope so. So thanks to everybody. That's the end of the WOW Marathon. I think I'll go and have a sleep.
Yeah.